Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Andrews.
Present.
Director Lassane.
Present.
Director Mitchell.
Present.
Director Wenta. Student Representative Parikh. Student Representative Pollock.
Present. Thank you. Our first item of business today is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, would you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes, consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment this evening for routine business, one for board comments, a segment for the superintendent's report, a segment for strategic progress reporting, one for information items, one for new business, and a segment for upcoming agenda items. The following changes were made since we published the agenda to you. Item 8.1, the superintendent's report, will be updated during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 11.1, legislative update, was adjusted because a revised presentation with a few changes was uploaded prior to today's meeting, along with the most recent version of the WASA publication this week in Olympia. Item 11.2, communications plan update was revised with an adjusted PowerPoint, which was uploaded prior to the meeting. In addition, item 14.1, I expect to adjust during the course of the meeting because we are going to give you a little outline for the upcoming meeting, and that will allow us to have a little bit better conversation. In all other respects, the meeting is as it was published to you. However, subsequent to tonight's executive session, I expect that you may want to add an action item as a result of conversation with counsel. Therefore, I would ask that you approve the agenda as we have slightly revised it.
Is there a motion to approve the slightly revised agenda?
I shall approve or make a motion to approve the slightly modified, lengthy addition to the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion regarding tonight's agenda? I do have a question. If we were to add an action item, at what point would that become part of the agenda?
Well, you actually, I think you can add an agenda item at just about any point with a supermajority vote of the board. Once you approve the agenda, which is done by a simple majority, it then takes a supermajority, which is 4 versus 3, to amend an approved agenda. I believe you can do that at any point during the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm your parliamentarian, so, you know.
Okay. Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Which takes us to section 5.0 recognitions, and we have no recognitions for this evening. So we will move on to section 6.0 public comment. Dr. Cohn, do we have any public comment for this evening?
We do not have any requests this evening.
Okay. Let's move on to section 7.0, the consent agenda. May you please introduce tonight's consent agenda?
The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes your consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently but are still of a routine business nature. These less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This provides directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of a particular item. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business. The system automatically renumbers the remaining items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its nature, consent agendas are not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding any of the items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published for your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Delasane. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Which takes us to section 8.0, board comments. This is a time where directors and student representatives have an opportunity to share information or comments about their activities as they relate to the district. I think we'll start down with Student Representative Pollock, if you have anything you'd like to update us on. Okay. Director Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. I will start out with what a nice time it was to see Jackson High School's production of Great Expectations, a book I never had to read, nor movie or story I really ever knew, and I think they did an excellent job, even with the hardship of faking British accents. I think some of our students are bound for great success, and I was able to see the Mr. Steckler, if I'm saying that last name right, who's now in the Mill Creek City Council. His son Jeremy was one of our superintendent scholars. He was at the show too and is doing outstanding at the UW, his dad said. And I was talking to him about his role on Mill Creek City Council and just how much we would like our partnership as we move forward with schools and with the bond failure. And he said he absolutely supports our schools and looks forward to what he can do on the city council. So I thought that was a great connection to make. The second thing is that opening up the newspaper, I believe it was Sunday or yesterday, and all the good news about Cascade, their boys basketball and the Malala book, and really the deep dive into that social emotional, where really have the students in that class. I mean, what an outstanding teacher. Then I was in Yakima the past 2 days, got back before this meeting, and had the pleasure of sitting next to a young man on my flight who, like me, got a bachelor's in psychology from a small liberal arts college, and then now is in his second year of the osteopathic, doctor of osteopathic school that's in Yakima. And so he graduated college in 2009, he said, did some things, and then, like me, had to do all of the prerequisites of first through third year of chemistry, biology, and math. And so with our focus on STEM, there are a number of us that reach it later than others. And but he grew up in this area, but just sort of not our district, but just the fact that sometimes we reach our science and math later. But then the cool thing I saw in Yakima for Mike, it's probably very, very expensive. At A.C. Davis High School, which I confirmed is a public high school in Yakima, they have a sky bridge connecting their buildings that goes over the public street. And very expensive for Everett High School, but I took a picture and was like, ooh, this looks really nice. And the kids were moving and they didn't have to be exposed to the streets. Then the last thing I have is that one of the things in this country that we have, two things, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. And that freedom does not sometimes come without cost. Some of our students walked out last week in honor of the students in Florida. That was a choice that they made, and some of them did have consequences of unexcused tardies or absences. Most of our students chose not to, and for their reasons or their parents' reasons. And my husband and I encouraged our daughter, if she wanted to do that. And that is a great thing in our country and in this school, that we have that choice. We have that choice to walk in a peaceful assembly, or we have the choice to do our schoolwork and to continue with our studies. And so just, whatever is right for that family, for that child, is a right that we have in this country, which I am very proud of. So that's it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Director Andrews.
I don't have any comments, thanks.
Director Delasane.
I do have some comments, and I'm very happy to be able to stand up and say these. I was very lucky in this past 2 weeks of being able to attend this one of the last, I guess you would call them last state of the school reviews at Monroe Elementary. And it was a very delightful saucer, and I'm very happy I had the opportunity to attend that because some of them I'm not able to do. It was a school in which my son attended, and he also attended Eisenhower. I missed Eisenhower's, but I really want to comment and commend the teachers and the administration there and the fine work that they are doing. And I look forward to the saucer next year at Monroe. I consider it one of my home schools, and I'm very glad that I have a chance to attend those home schools saucers. I also happened to attend an event on the 10th of March in which our own Dr. Stewart was recognized, and I would like to say congratulations to Dr. Stewart at the NAACP awards dinner, in which she received an award for her work here representing all of the students and her fine work with representing them well and the community well and what she does in the community. And I can really say that I'm very proud to have the opportunity to know Dr. Stewart. And I wish one day when I grow up, I can be as forceful and as involved as she is in the work that she does in our community, because it is all about service. And I thank you so much for being a role model for me and what I want to do when I grow up. Thank you. And that is all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Yep. Director Wenta.
Thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Stewart, on your richly deserved award. That's fantastic. I had the opportunity to attend the last saucer, which was at Eisenhower. Pam, we did miss you. But one of the things that stood out for me is this was my fourth saucer at Eisenhower, and and I said that because this is a school that has had some form of administrative change over the last several years. And just seeing where they have come, how they feel as a team, just the level of engagement by the staff and the leadership team that was there, it was just really, really refreshing. And I think they're on the right trajectory. They were kind of giving each other a hard time as far as, are we going to make it 5 years? And I think they will. I mean, I think it's a fantastic team out there, and it was great to see folks rally around that. So it was one of the more inspiring saucers in the sense that, not that the other ones aren't inspiring, and I want to be very clear about that, but this whole idea that when you see a team galvanize around their leadership and really want to follow that direction, it was really nice to see. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I too attended a similar saucer, one of the last few at Madison Elementary School, and they too have been a school that has had a lot of leadership change in recent years, and the culture and some of the external test scores reflect that. And I left there after that saucer with such a good feeling inside because that team is turning around and that school is turning around, and it's a really great thing to see. Like you, I've attended all 4 years in a row, so had the opportunity to sort of track the progress and see where it went. And I wanted to also share at the WASDA conference in Bellevue this past fall, one of the breakouts we presented on the saucers. And I was looking, they sent out, Dr. Cohn forwarded me some comments from the different sessions that he was involved in, and I was involved in one of them. And I had an opportunity to sort of share from a board perspective what it's like to be a part of the saucer process. And one of the comments was, great idea, involve school directors in, school review. And it just struck me that, gosh, not every district does this. And it made me appreciate once again that we are in a district that includes us in a lot of the important work that's happening, so we are up to date and understand. And when you hear budget requests, it's not out of left field. You understand, oh, yeah, we need new, math curriculum because we've sat through these saucers and seen struggling scores and such. So the connectivity is just really great, and I appreciate that a lot. So with that, I'm turning it over to you, Dr. Cohen, for the superintendent update.
Okay. I have a few slides, and I've got a partner in crime this evening, and I'm very much looking forward to this. So here we go. The picture on the front slide of the report this evening is Lowell Elementary students who have discovered virtual 3D dinosaurs, volcanoes,
That's cool.
tornadoes, and a whole lot more using Google Augmented Reality software. In this particular case, they walked around, inspected, and dove inside different animals and insects and weather patterns. The AR technology uses the classroom as a map and virtually places 3D objects that students can explore. So this is made possible by Google's Expeditions AR Pioneer program. I suspect that you will be hearing and seeing a lot more about technology-rich experiences. Oh, look, the first slide of the report is about first grade researchers in action. You probably recall that Garfield Elementary is one of the first one-to-one platform schools. In this case, first grade teacher Jade Chrysler was really thrilled with her students' research project, and she shared it with us because she was too excited about how it was going. She explained for us to share with you tonight that it's truly amazing what the kids can do. Remember, these are first grade kids, and how often we underestimate their abilities to be challenged in new areas. She said in this case, the case she shared with us, students began with informational writing. They did some whole class research and write-up on penguins. And then students picked an animal from an earlier unit to research. Then they took notes on a graphic organizer. Again, first grade students. They typed introduction and conclusion sentences from a selection in Google Docs. And Jade said she never could have dreamt that this process would go this smooth. The students were so engaged and excited, and she says they were almost completely independent in this process. That, by the way, is a red fox in the little picture that is an artifact or example of the work that they were doing. Zipping up to a more advanced grade level, we want you to know that the Washington DECA State Career Development Conference was held earlier this month in Bellevue. Everett, Cascade, and Jackson High School have teams that have qualified to compete in the DECA International Career Development Conference. It is in April. It is in Atlanta, and they are going to compete in projects on school-based enterprise and personal financial literacy and a whole host of other categories. And each one of these pictures is of one of the groups from one of our high schools. We're very proud of the work that they're doing. We're also proud of our NJROTC Seagull Company members. They were at a regional championship, and Commander says that this was a historic engagement for Seagull Company. There were 30 schools that sent ROTC units, and I should say junior ROTC units, and they represented 4 of the military service branches. I'm just going to share a couple of highlights. A 5-member academic team won first place in the academic competition. Our 2 color guard teams each finished second place in their respective categories. Unarmed drill team took second place, which is the highest ever finish in the unit history. And at the end of the day, the Seagull Company, which includes cadets who go to Everett High School and Cascade High School and Jackson High School, came home with the regional championship second place trophy, which is the highest finish in unit history. So we want to say congratulations to the team and to the commander, who does a remarkable job all year long with these young adults. This month we held a Marshallese High School and Beyond Night event at Everett Community College. It included students in grades 6 through 12 and their families. Participants received information about the offerings at the community college and received a tour of the Advanced Manufacturing Training and Education Center, which you'll hear us refer to from time to time as AmTech. Lo Kantafa, who's a security officer here in the district, was the keynote speaker and shared his experience growing up in Samoan culture and underscored the importance of continuing education after high school and what he wished he would have known earlier in in his career. So by all accounts that I've heard, this was a remarkably successful evening. We've been working very hard to develop these over time with our Marshallese community. OSPI recently published a new achievement index. We're going to give the screen over to Dr. Matthews, who is going to take you on a brief tour of the new achievement index. And this is not for the faint of heart, and we do not encourage you to attempt this at home.
All right, so the new achievement index is called the Washington School Improvement Framework, and there are substantial differences in how both it is calculated and also who counts in this index. So the current index is based on the last 3 years of data that you're going to see, and it determines support for the next 3 years. The next time that it is calculated will be 2021, and it will be based on this school year through the 2019-2020 school year. And that's important because this spring we'll be giving the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science for the first time, and it will be included in that next index for the support upcoming. So this index is based on several different factors. For elementary and middle school, schools are rated on their proficiency in ELA and math, their student growth percentiles in ELA and math, English language learner progress, and attendance. And you can see here that the largest part of this index is 50% for growth. The school's student growth, median student growth, is 50% of the index, proficiency being 40%, and then attendance and English learner progress 5% each. For high school, there's not a growth measure, so 50% of the index is based on graduation, 30% on proficiency, 5% on English learner progress, and then there are 3 additional factors. So attendance is 1, 9th grade failure rates is the 2nd, and then the 3rd is dual credit enrollment in high school. The calculation of the index is different than in past years. Each of these elements is scored on a score of 1 to 10, but instead of breaking those scores down into 10 equal parts of scores, now what we're doing is we are ranking all of the schools, and we are dividing the schools by the lowest 10% of schools getting a 1, the second lowest 10% of schools getting a 2, so into deciles. So it's not quite as easy. You can see here in this example, a 62 has a rating of 5 for this part of the index. In the past index, a 62 would be a rating of 7 because it falls between 60 and 70%. So in that way, it's important to understand it's a relative index and not an absolute index. Each of these factors is...
Catherine, sorry, so this is like grading on a curve, not based on standards?
Very much, and I will pull up one school so that you can see that. It's very important for the public to understand this as well.
Thank you.
To understand.
I'm educating as many people, including the Herald.
For so long we've gone on percentiles.
Right, right.
No kidding.
All right, so this is an example of how we would calculate it for an elementary or middle school in our district. Science is not included, nor is graduation, dual credit, or 9th grade on track. And we see that proficiency for ELA and math over 3 years is combined and weight averaged, as is student growth, which is, again, 50% of the index. So just as an example here, this school got a 60% for proficiency, which put them at a score of 5 in ELA, but notice that they got a 7 with only a 57% proficiency in math. And again, that's because we're rank ordering the schools and dividing them into 10 equal parts. So in this index, we would add the 5 and the 7 and divide by 2 to get the average, which is 6. And because it's 40% of the index, multiply it by 0.4 to get 2.4. Similarly with growth, you see that this school got a 3 for ELA and a 5 for math. That averages to a 4, that's 50% of the index, so they get 2 points for that. And then EL progress, they were only at a 1, so that's 0.05. And for attendance, they had a 6, and that is 5% in the index, so that's a 0.3. So this school overall for all students had a multiple measure score of 4.75. Those scores are then rank ordered for the entire state, and the highest score for the lowest 5% of schools determines the threshold by which we give comprehensive and targeted support to our schools. And for Everett Public Schools, we have no schools in comprehensive support, which is huge because we have 26 schools rated on 11 different subgroups. So we ended up with 5 targeted support out of 270 different measures. So it's about 1.8% of our measures. All right, so in this case, for the state of Washington, 2.3 is the cutoff, and that determines if your multiple measure for all students is below 2.3, you're in comprehensive support. But then that number is applied to the measure for all of the subgroups. So any subgroup that is below that 2.3 would be given targeted support. All right, so that's how it is measured, or how it's calculated. The second big change is who is counted. So in the past, any school with less than 20 in a single year of any subgroup was not counted, it was suppressed. Now, if you have 20 in a subgroup over 3 years, your subgroup is counted. So you could have 7 in 1 year, 7 in another year, 6 in the third year, and that would be counted because it hits 20. That's very intentional by the state because they want to increase the students that are included in the index. The second big change is the half-yearly enrollment. In the past, students counted for proficiency or growth if they were in your school by October 1 and remained there through testing. Now, if a student is in your school by October 1 and they attend your school for 150 calendar days, so that includes holidays and weekends, not contiguous, any 150 days, they will count for your proficiency. So kids who are in and out of our schools will count now, and they hadn't in the past. And then for attendance, any student who's enrolled between September 1 and June 1, for any 90 cumulative calendar days, not contiguous, their attendance will count for or against your school. All right, so what does this look like very quickly for us? So if you go to OSPI report card, you'll see this new Washington School Improvement Framework, and there's a rough infographic about what I just explained. And then you can click on the School Improvement Framework display, and I pulled a school up because I don't trust live demos. And this is Silver Firs Elementary, huge celebration here for them at 9.1 for their all. So very high multiple measure for their all. And then you see the measure for each of their schools. This line represents that 2.3. Oops, what did I do there? Go back. See, that's why you don't trust live demos. Very easy website to deal with, by the way, fortunately for me. Silver Firs. Okay, so if you notice on the top here, you'll see the red is a 1 and the dark gray is 10. And if you hover over the measure, you'll see their score in each of the areas. So they had a 9 for proficiency and 9 for growth. That's awesome, of course. But let's go down here to the actual numbers that created those scores. So you'll notice here in special education, they had a 46.1% proficiency rate in ELA, and that gave them a score of 3. With just a 48.8, so just 2.7 higher, they got a 6 in math. So this is what I mean by it is a relative measure. So you can't simply look at the proficiency of the school because the proficiency is ranked against all other schools. And in this case, having a 46.1 put them in the lower third, so between 20 and 30%. but having a 48.8 put them between 50 and 60% of schools. You can see, for example, right here in attendance, this range, you would be in the red at about 70%. So the range is very, very small. A small change makes a big difference. So this is released to the public, and we are doing webinars with all of the principals to make sure they understand the site, they can talk intelligently about it. It's particularly difficult, I think, for high schools because their proficiency, of course, is based on a test that wasn't the graduation exam, so they had lower rates, lower passing rates, and that brought their scores down, although our high schools did really well.
Thank you, Catherine. We're going to go ahead and switch back to my last couple of slides. The first one that'll come up should be gift recognition. In tonight's consent agenda, you approved a gift, in this case, an example, of $37,039 from Everett High School's PTA. It was raised during their annual auction. The gift's going to be used to purchase classroom furniture, to fund ASB activities, technology needs, and to provide classroom grants. Major success. Long string of successes, very significant community investment in Everett High's success. Finally, the Everett High School, Everett Memorial Stadium baseball field replacement is underway. You can see the grass growing if you look out the north side of the building. The contractor has completed the fine grading, is in the process of installing the synthetic turf right now. And the field is getting greener by the minute. We currently, and I want you to know this has changed several times in the last couple of days, if I'm correct, Mr. Gunn. The current anticipated completion date is April 12th. It was April 1st, then it was April 15th. Now it's April 12th. So at the moment, it's April 12th. On another matter, bids were received for Elementary 18. Tiger Construction is the low bidder. You awarded the bid earlier this evening, so we're very much looking forward to commencing that project. That's the end of my slides. I think there are a couple of quick things I'd also like to say. You've got a communications item later in your meeting this evening, and you've got a special meeting coming up where you're going to talk about post-bond activities, how you're going to respond to that result. I will tell you that we presented today, did a little bit of an update for the Mill Creek Business Association. A lot of folks in attendance, a lot of attentiveness to the district's success, and a lot of questions about what's coming next and when you're going to rerun the bond. And I will tell you that I'm getting that question in a number of places in the community as I travel around and talk with people. I also have tonight a little treat. I know we don't do school visits till the first meeting of the new month, but there's an envelope here. I visited Woodside, and just out of the blue, students from Mrs. Lemmer's class sent me some very nice notes that they made up, and you'll just love them. So I'm gonna go ahead and distribute them so you can take a look at them. And the other thing's sort of a personal note. My wife and I went to see Hamilton last week, and I will tell you that it was absolutely outstanding. One of the most, I think it's the most exceptional artistic event that she and I have attended together, have enjoyed together. It's worth going to, and if you're at all a student of American history and the founding of our country and how some of the things turned out, the emotional side of it, if you will, I'd say that this is doubly impactful. So I certainly recommend it. That's the superintendent's report this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, at this time, we move to section 10.0, strategic progress monitoring, and I went through this presentation earlier, so my head wouldn't be spinning from all the data, and then you just kind of killed it there for the last bit. But I know you three are gonna walk us through it all, so I'm really looking forward to. There's some great information, some great celebrations here, so take her away.
All right, so tonight I'm going to review the college career and life readiness indicators as I have in the past. Jeannie Willard is with me to illustrate the AP program development that we've been working on, and Becky Ballbeck is here to highlight the intersection of social emotional learning and our college career and life readiness. And you have seen the outcomes, so I will launch into the data. So this is just a review. We have looked at this data set several times. Elementary schools, when we look at college, career, and life readiness, we look at being at standard on the SBA and ELA and math in by grade 3, attending at least 90% of the time, and then social emotional development, in particular persistence, emotional regulation, attentiveness, and the ability to work with others. So I put this on an indicator. The dark blue is 2015, then 2016 in orange, and finally in gray, 2017. Here is Everett Public Schools. These are rank ordered by free and reduced lunch with the lowest on top. And you will notice that Everett Public Schools has been increasing for the last 3 years. We do still see a drop in this indicator based on free and reduced lunch rate declining. However, there are some big, I guess, things to celebrate. Of course, we have Cedarwood and Whittier that are performing higher than expected by their free and reduced lunch rate. Garfield and Hawthorne have made huge gains in the last 2 years as well. At middle school, we look at the percentage of students on track by 8th grade. Enrollment in algebra by 8th grade, and having less than 20% absences, and then our 21st century skills. And as you'll recall from last year, we do measure this both with the algebra and without the algebra, and we do that because in Everett Public Schools, unlike many school districts, we also offer 9th grade English, world language, and science, and so students have options that might take them away from algebra as a selection. So in green, or here's Everett Public Schools in the middle, and the green represents being absent less than 20% of the time, meeting the SBA standard, and taking the advanced math course, while the blue is just the SBA and attendance factors. And as we saw with elementary, we do see a decreasing college readiness by free and reduced lunch rate, so that trend is obviously something that we focus on.
And can you just quickly address why you use 20% in middle school and 10% in absenteeism in?
Just because the research called for 20%. We certainly could change that as a district, but when we first set these indicators up 3 or 4 years ago, the research out of the Stanford Center, the Gardner Center at Stanford, AIR, all indicated 20% at middle school and 10% for elementary.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. High school, there are 6 indicators that you can see here, and we'll walk through each of these with a little bit of expansion on the AP scores. So first, grade point average, you can see Everett High has had an increase, a big jump, 10%, and the district has increased as well. With the other 2 schools, just a slight decline in the percent of graduates who are at GPA of 3.0 or higher. The next is the College and Career Readiness Standard for the SBA, and I do look forward to next year when we will be reporting grade 10, which is both a graduation and an accountability exam, because as you can see from this data, it doesn't really reflect the preparation of our students. For these 2 classes, these students did not need to pass this test to graduate. In fact, the big difference here that you see between 2016 ELA and 2017 is that in this year, at the last minute, they made the 10th grade exam, the SBA. And so lots of kids showed up and they did very well. So these indicators should be improving. And then Everett High, you'll notice the big jump there. They simply got more students out to take the exam that year. So college readiness standard for SAT, we've seen an increase at every school and at the district. We continue to watch that, and that's quite an accomplishment actually, considering that we test every student in the junior class. College academic distribution requirements. So these are the standards for getting into college. They're broken down by each of the disciplines, English, math, science, and so on. Pay particularly close attention to the pink, because that's the percentage of all students that met the standards in every area. And this is class of 2015, and it has risen each year, 2016, 2017. So we're making huge gains in terms of getting students to those standards. For college coursework, here we have advanced placement. We'll also look at college and high school, running start, and tech prep. Here is low income, just to highlight this. Although we're not at proportionality yet, we have made a huge gain from 7% of the students being low income in 2013 to 25.6%. And you'll notice too, our Hispanic students are proportional now, so that's a huge improvement. ELL and special ed, I made that yellow. We have made gains. They're not proportional, but these are difficult courses for a student who's learning English or who has special needs. So it's great to see that be above the N. Here's college and the high school. We see that same pattern with our low-income students increasing substantially, not quite at proportionality, and our Hispanic students. And then again, our ELL and special ed students being less than proportional but making gains at college and high school courses. Running Start, our low-income students are not participating in that in quite the same rate that they are as in AP and college and high school. And you see lots of N indicating less than 10 or a suppressed number. It's not proportional for our Hispanic students as it was for AP and college and the high school, or for African American students. And ELL, we had no students, and special ed was below the N. So that's an area that we need to look into. Here's our CTE dual credit, which was formerly tech prep. And as you can see, a little higher percentage of students who are low income and almost proportional to the population, and proportional in just about every ethnicity. ELL and special ed, though not proportional, substantially higher than the other areas. So our indicator for advanced placement is the percent of qualifying scores, and you can see that has increased in each of our schools and at the district, with Jackson being just slightly flat there this last year. We're going to expand this a little bit to include some data that we normally share in the AP presentation. So you've seen this slide before. The yellow indicates the number of students enrolled. You can see that has increased steadily over the course of the last 5 years. And the number of seats in courses. So students are not only more students taking AP classes, but AP students taking more classes per student. The orange indicates the number of test takers, and you can see that that gap is starting to close from students enrolled in courses to AP course takers, and likewise the number of exams that students take. So we're at 2366 last year, is impressive. When we look at students by AP test takers by grade level, you'll see that we have increased in every area. Grade 12 is flat just this last year, but notice ninth grade went from not enough students to count 4 years ago to 195 this last year. And I would suspect that the flattening at senior high is they're taking more classes earlier. They're not trying to cram it all into their senior year. If we look at just the graduating class of 2017 over the course of their 4 years, 49.6% of those students took AP exams. And of the students in that graduating class, 7.7% of them took 6 or more exams in their time in high school. If we look at the number of courses they took, 65.3% of students in that class took an AP course sometime in their time in high school, and 10% of students in that class took 5.5 or more credits, so nearly a year or more. We look at AP qualifying scores by grade level for this class. You can see that between 58 and 60% every single year for this class, from 10th grade to 12th grade. And then finally, this is a statistic that the College Board puts out, and this is the percent of students in the class who earn a score of 3 or higher on an AP exam. So we report the percent of students taking exams, and it's about twice this amount. Their reporting of all of the students who are enrolled in the school. So you can see Jackson at the highest, about 37%, and then district-wide at 30% of students. And with that, I will turn it over to Jean.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. I have the honor of sharing our AP work and our focus being on AP for All. Personally, I want to insert, I was waiting for jazz hands with Hamilton at the beginning, but it did not happen. Just saying. Talking about centerpieces, AP has become the centerpiece to our curriculum. If you were to look through our district course catalog, you would see sequences of courses, and you can see throughout that AP has really become both beginner classes and also where kids arrive after some experience in that area. We have lots of on-ramps to our AP courses. Springboard, as you know, is our English curriculum, grades 6 through 12. I lightly add bunny ears around it's pre-AP, right? It's building those AP skills and it's aligned with what they see in those AP courses. We have a number of what we call entry-level AP courses. It really doesn't mean they're easier, but they don't mean a lot of expertise in a particular area. Courses like environmental science, where many kids take that without a lot of very detailed experience in science. Also, AP Human Geography is another gateway AP course. So we keep growing those. In our world languages, we have been working towards changing the sequence in such a way in high school where you have, let's say, Spanish, Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3. And though we've offered Spanish 4, we've been changing that so that students, instead of taking that course, are taking AP Spanish literature or language, depending upon where they are in that sequence. And so the fourth course, or sometimes the fifth when it comes to Spanish, is really the end of that sequence. Then a lot of work has been done around replacing many of our courses that would have been identified as honors as AP, because we are aligned to assessments, we have clear curriculum and clear outcomes. And really at this point, our honors courses really live in our English department for English 1, 2, and 3. We have district-wide common syllabi. We have 29 AP courses overall. There are 38 AP courses that are offered by the College Board. The ones that we're missing are really around, there are very select courses around physics. There's also a few more social studies and music theory, and that's what you would see that we are missing, very specialized courses. Our teachers have worked really hard the last 3 years on developing their syllabuses together. It's always a work in progress, but we clearly have pieces that they have finished, and students are learning with similar outcomes across all of our schools. We've also launched many signature AP programs over the last few years. Our AP Capstone program, you see now that Jackson finished last year with the first cohort of students who have AP Seminar and AP Research. And this year we'll have juniors and seniors who reach that AP Capstone at Cascade and Everett High School. Then we also have a program, AP with We, where 6 teachers are participating. It's a service learning project that goes along with our AP courses. You'll see it in some of our human geography classes, Spanish language, computer science principles, and AP Studio Art. And students are actually working at local service levels, like around hunger, and global levels, looking at how there's been impacts to changes about human movement and so forth, and human geography and what that means for us. And we keep growing our additional AP offerings. We added another AP Studio Art, AP Chinese. We keep growing what it is that we offer and select for students. We support teachers is the next piece. So not only many offerings, but how we support teachers. There are local PLCs at each of our high schools where our AP teachers gather and involve themselves in a continuous improvement cycle, looking at the data returned from the College Board around their AP exams, and then working on their syllabus, working on what their assignments in class look like, and then looking for outcomes as the next cycle continues. We've grown our AP readers, where we opened up many different seats across all of our high schools for teachers to participate in the AP reading, which is your best professional development. They actually score the AP exams together at the national level, and right now we've had 9 selected this year, and many times we find a few more in the next few months before June hits when it takes place. Very beneficial to our students. AP Summer Institute. We send teachers to the AP Summer Institutes at Bellevue and across the country when we need to, but what we now have is our second year of our own AP Summer Institute. And last year we had 5 sessions. This year we'll have 7 different sessions. And at this point we have enrollment for our AP Summer Institute that is already at the level at which we had in total last year. So we have a few months to go. We will see more growth there too. We've also supported our teachers through some of our district AP student support workshops. The focus this year has really been around equity and also around student belonging and really doing deep dives on what that means and having a welcoming atmosphere in our AP courses. To complement our AP syllabus work, we've had many AP syllabus days together working around what it really means to support students in the AP classroom, and that's a section that they really built out and then built out how that teaching takes place. And then we support our AP teachers through our AVID strategies, sending teachers to AVID Summer Institute, AVID Path trainings, and bringing AVID trainers to some of those AP trainings. I want to share with you, I was able to work with our College Spark grant that helps to support our AP program, and they came out last spring. I spent some time at Everett High School. I was able to bring students and teachers from all 3 of our comprehensive high schools, and I want to share this video with you that we were able to put together that really has our student voice.
At first, I was scared because many students told me that AP is going to be hard.
Well, before, I thought AP classes wasn't for people that looked like me. I thought it was for the people that were white and really, really smart.
Some of our families and kids will go to college because that's the expectation. Their parents are scientists or their parents are executives somewhere. But we have a large number of students now who don't have that experience at home.
You have to reduce the barriers. General knowledge barrier, acceptance barrier, welcoming barrier. The way to do that is to have conversations with kids.
Letting them know their opportunities, their options, matching what opportunity works with what they desire to be.
We have a very diverse population here at Everett High.
We've had parent nights in several different languages that have been a wonderful outreach to the parents to help them know, yes, your student can take this. Doesn't matter if you've only been in the country a year, you can still do this. This opportunity is for all.
Mindset is one of the biggest challenges, not just for students, but for staff as well.
Part of it was getting teachers and students to buy into the idea that there's an opportunity here for you. Go do it.
I have broadened my perspectives. I really did feel AP as an elitist, that it was the top class, only the most special kids can take it. My feelings have definitely changed because I have kids that aren't the top most special kids that are just as adequate in the class and do just as good a job.
In 2013, we had 208 students in an AP course. We have over 1,050 students requests for AP for next year.
I have a very big dream. I want to be a surgeon, and I know that I'm going to have to take many years in college, and I think AP class would help me prepare for college and help me pass my classes.
They get you thinking in the classes as well, so you have to really think for yourself, and they're not really telling you the answers for everything, so I really enjoy doing that. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be like that in college as well.
It's hard work, but if you're willing to put in the work, you can do it. And there's help everywhere around the school. There's the principal, the counselors. They're all here to help you be successful in that class.
They see that I am just like everyone else and I can do this.
It's always sunny at Everett High School, apparently.
Did College Spark produce that?
Yeah, they came out and they worked with all of our schools. I helped to organize it, and we just tried to pull up some student voice, and really they just let them talk about their different experiences and different
Really good job.
staff.
Yeah.
So it was really nice that they did that. A key piece to our work, as you know, has been Equal Opportunity Schools, where they've helped to prepare some of the data. We have this great data from Catherine, but also we have this other layer of data that we receive that includes, and that's part of this cycle, is really that we have, for the last 5 years, surveyed all of our students in high school and our staff to ask them questions about how they feel about AP, whether they belong, whether they're interested, what their background is, and we use that data. And so that data, and the next step there is really outreach and recruitment. We do a lot of different events to actually recruit kids into AP, but a lot of it is the one-on-one conversations with kids. And then we have spent a lot of time supporting kids individually, as well as the system, to make sure that teachers and students really understand what AP means and to make sure that they're successful when they get to the exam as well. So we've stayed focused on targets of gap closing. So we've talked for the last few years about the participation gap in AP, and Catherine presented it in one lens. This is the lens that we usually look at in terms of equal opportunity schools. And what you see here is that we've seen a huge growth in terms of our overall percentage of students taking AP courses. When we started this work, we were way down in the 20s and 30s, depending upon which school you looked at as overall percentage of participation. And now we're up in 40s and 60s and so forth. We've closed the gap between race and ethnicity, but where our work really is going forward is around low income. The income divide shows up, and you can see a line pretty much across that as well, where the shorter lines for each pair, so if we just take white and Asian, medium, high income, where you see 60% of the students there, they're our benchmark group. That's what we want all of our students to be participating in AP at that rate. If you look at their neighbor, the low income white and Asian students, they're at a rate of 40%. And so that's the gap that we need to close to ensure that we have equal participation of groups. And then you can look across the board where you see race and ethnicity is not the barrier necessarily, but income definitely is. And so that is a lot of where our outreach efforts are taking place right now. With that, when we started this work 5 years ago, one of the concerns we heard about, and we still talk about, is what will happen to student grades. We worry about exam scores too, but what happens when they're in the class? And what this shows is this is 4 years of data where you can see that lightest green bar in each pair. So you can see grades A, B, C, D, E, F, or no E's, F. I shouldn't have said E, effort. What's happened is we've gone back to skewed to the left. So as we were a few years ago where we had many A's, B's, and C's, we are seeing again that most of our grades are really around A's, B's, and C's. And actually, anecdotally, teachers are actually sharing that they're finding that students are able to be in there, but teaching practices have met them as well. So it's both parts. Also, many more students in those numbers as well. When we talk about the data we get back from the student surveys, we actually are able to see where students report back what the gaps are for enrolling in AP. And what you see here is that on the bookends, the students are reporting that there's not enough adult encouragement. That's the first set. And then the last piece on there is the welcome barrier. So they're not feeling welcome necessarily. So these are messages that we're trying to get across and working with staff directly on how they communicate what AP means and making sure that students feel welcome. And our workshops with teachers this year were really around belonging and welcoming as a result of that data. Then in the center of this data, you'll see 3 categories there where students reported that their barrier to enrolling in an AP course was around benefits. They didn't know why they should actually enroll in an AP course. What's in it for me? So that's an information gap that we are continually trying to fill. And then a general knowledge barrier, still not enough information. That's something we can do something about. And then school access barrier. There's still beliefs out there, even after many years, that there are many criteria and eligibility requirements to be in AP. Again, information and many of those one-on-one conversations and even group conversations get at how to enroll in AP as well. So with that, our outreach and recruitment, we have letters from principals that go directly to families. I know some of you have experienced that. We have many one-on-one conversations between student and staff. So counselors, specific teachers, our assistant principals and principals, myself, many others who are sitting back here, have gone to schools. We sit and we talk to kids about what it is that they have plans around and to see if AP fits and what their plan is. And as Michelle was stating in the video, we have many kids who have multiple courses at this point where we might be having, is that too many, as a different kind of conversation, not that we don't want them to have rigor. We have many increased options and new courses. That's part of what we share with students and families. We've had panels and information sessions at each of the comprehensive high schools, an AP Roadshow that again is largely students selling to students what it means to be an AP. Many outreach efforts that include phone calls, and then the AP potential letters, which are directly given to us from the College Board that are structured around their PSAT results. Now, when students are in the courses, we follow up by making sure that students are supported. So we have summer institutes and boot camps. We have after-school study groups, depending upon the subject area. We have school day, depending upon which school you're talking about. And Naseka over at Everett High School has particular AP support during that time. We have Saturday school AP institutes, especially right now as we get closer to the AP exams. We have implemented Navient's AP test prep for the 3rd year, and many AP exam guides that are offered through teachers or different content areas. And then what we see reported back from students is that they find the #1 help is actually still going to teacher office hours and their peer groups. That's what students are saying back to us, and we know that teachers still offer it. Some of the most traditional ways, but kids still say that's the most beneficial to them. We also work one-on-one with kids to keep them in the course and support them through. So you're seeing on the screen that at Everett High School, and this is true at all of the schools, that they put a plan together if a student is struggling in that class to see how they can get additional support and make sure they know what is offered to them. Kids who are new to AP and underrepresented, I included some quotes up here, but students were very appreciative about redoing assignments. So how we work grading practices in AP, but this is beyond AP, has been beneficial to students and is also part of plans that we put together. And also, again, we see that teacher help, the Saturday school, and the second quote is something that students recognize as being helpful in terms of being ready for the AP exam. We work with teachers where they use the list to make sure that students really have from the Equal Opportunity Schools survey data that every student has selected a trusted adult, and if they have not in those surveys, we go and circle around and select them. And we have critical conversations and meetups so that students feel included. And so here there was some professional learning around looking at students and then what do those conversations really look like. And this was based on the data we pulled from Equal Opportunity Schools and our AP enrollment data. We have many celebrations in our AP work. One is really that students over and over again report how they feel having been part of our AP program and how they feel like it's aligned to their future goals, and how it really has allowed them to be self-disciplined and to evaluate themselves along the way, which you see in this quote. And then I want to highlight that this year we're being celebrated by College Board in their 8th annual AP District Honor Roll. And that really showed up in the equity and excellence data, but we're really seeing a lot of changes in who is in our AP class. So for next steps, we really want to increase our AP exams. We have lots of kids in there. We need to close our low income gap there, but AP exams for all. We need to continue the outreach and recruitment. Without it, we wouldn't see the numbers we have. We're really focused on grading practices and homework, what's necessary in an AP class to be truly prepared and what's not. And over the summer, that can be a barrier for new students to AP to really feel like they're ready for the new course. We are working with teachers on explicit instruction of AP skills for new to AP students, and we're working on growing our AP program. Even though there are barriers to our English learner students and our special education students being in AP, many of them could be successful in many of those classes. And then we continue to grow a culture of belonging. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Becky Ballback.
So this is a third in the trifecta. I have the opportunity and privilege of talking about how social emotional learning intersects with life readiness and college and career readiness. And so to illustrate that, I want to show this video.
When I look back at all the important milestones in my life, I'm reminded of one that seemed small but made all the difference. It was the day my second grade teacher introduced us to social emotional learning. I learned about my emotions and what empathy is, how to talk through problems with my classmates, and how to make good decisions. It really helped me understand how to manage all the things on my mind, especially strong emotions. They were often the things crowding my brain, making it hard to think and focus. Sometimes all it took was a breath. And 1, 2, 3, saying, I can do it. When I knew what to do with my emotions, it freed up space in my mind to learn. I became really good at it. I learned how to find my own path and solve all sorts of problems. My social emotional skills have always been there, backing me up. They helped me gain confidence to pursue the things I really wanted, like a spot on the soccer team, that A in biology. They taught me to listen and walk in other people's shoes. And that has unlocked so many doors in my life. 25 years later, I use my social emotional skills every day, especially with my patients. I know what you're feeling. I've been there. Take a deep breath. Social emotional learning. It makes all the difference. Find out more today.
This really illustrates one of the reasons that I am so passionate about the intersection of life readiness, social emotional learning, and college and career readiness. There we go. So college, career, and life readiness coalesce as Everett Public Schools graduates obtain the academic knowledge, attitudes, and skills to successfully transition to a college-level coursework or workforce training and or employment so that they can adapt to the ever-changing world in pursuit of their goals. It just is so basic, I think, and foundational to them preparing for their life after high school. A significant component of the Tier 1 social emotional learning supports is the universal implementation of second step curriculum. And this means that every student in our district, grades kindergarten through 5th grade, goes through and receives instruction and practice in social emotional learning and skill building offered through the second step curriculum. This year we have expanded and are expanding into our middle school so that all of our middle school students as well continue working on and adapting and practicing those skills to help them to be, to give them more tools in their social emotional awareness and proficiency. Growth mindset, grit, and self-management represent critical elements of our college and career readiness. And one of the ways that we're measuring them is through the Panorama SEL surveys. These surveys were given last fall to all of our students grades 3 through 12. And one of some of the things that we learned were that 61% of our students responded favorably to questions about growth mindset, while 59% of them responded favorably to questions about grit, and 75% responded favorably to questions about self-management. We were also able to see where we are with respect to national results. We are at 99% for self-management, 40% for grit, and 20% for growth mindset. All of these are areas for which we are working on. One of the ways that we provide students with career preparation and career readiness and career information is in the 7th grade. Our students take the Career Cluster Finder Survey in Navient. Student responses are used to determine career clusters matching student interests inside and outside of school and personal qualities. The results are used to guide career pathway and specific career options. Then in 10th grade, students take the Career Interest Profiler, which helps students discover the types of work activities and careers that match their interests. Students answer 180 questions about work activities that people do at their jobs. Then all of this is combined when the tool matches the student's interest to specific careers, and it provides information on jobs. And so if a student says, well, I don't necessarily want to go to a 4-year college or university, well, then it will show them what careers are available to them, what jobs are available to them with some preparation or with medium preparation. And it gives the whole range from that to extensive preparation. This helps us and it helps us help our students, particularly in high school when they are completing the High School and Beyond plan, and it helps in the course registration and course planning. So in summary, tonight we have reviewed college, career, and life readiness indicators. We've illustrated the advanced placement program development to date and highlighted the intersection of social emotional learning and college, career, and life readiness. So what questions do you have for Dr. Matthews or Dr. Willard or me?
Thank you very much, all three of you. Directors, I imagine, given the abundance of information and data, there are questions. Who would like to begin?
I'm just wondering on your last slide why there's only one Coug and 2 Huskies, but I'll get past that. Great presentation by the team. It is just chock full of data, and it's wonderful. Becky, your slide 53, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. As a school district, we average 20% growth mindset and 40% grit. Did I hear that right?
We average 20% when compared with other schools across the nation.
Yeah.
Our results were
20 percentile.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So our students responded favorably, 61% of our students responded favorably, and when compared to a national sample.
Right.
That was the 20th percentile.
Okay. And so what do other districts look like that are higher? And what do their demographics look like? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, that's a great question. Actually, we're working with Panorama Ed, we can narrow this data down and select, for example, urban districts or districts with higher poverty. We can also separate it out by grade band. Elementary, middle, or high school to see if there are any differences or variations in that as well. Off the top of my head,
Of course.
I don't estimate.
Yeah. I mean, I love the panorama data. I know it's new for our district. There's probably a wealth of information of what we can find there. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Lassane?
I do have a question for Dr. Willard, and this is surrounding the strategies to support student success. In it, you talked about Student Summer Institute and boot camps. Can you describe what that would mean?
We invite students, and usually it's based on the AP course they're taking, to come in, and each school's a little different, for a series of days where they're set up with peer groups. They look at the books in the summer reading together. They work on the initial assignments. They get to know teachers, so they have a head start on that piece. It looks a little bit different, but that is basically the range of things that take place during those. we've had great attendance when kids have been invited.
And in your after-school study groups, do we provide transportation for those kids that might need transportation in order to stay after school?
We have the after-school bus that serves our 24 credit students and our AP students and many other programs. So absolutely we do. If you want to stay on the bus for a while, let's be real.
If you want to stay.
Yes.
You know, I know what that is like at
Yes.
11th grade and 12th grade. Well, thank you very much. And Saturday School AP Institute, can you describe what that looks like at each school?
Yeah, well, that basically is what's happening right now. As we get closer to the AP exams in May, they invite students in. And this is another place where a lot of the work converges. So, right, we spend the whole year with credit recovery. We talk about it and kids don't want to come early in the year. We get later in the year and they come, or near a semester change. But this happens around the AP exam too. We already have staff available and ready to organize, and they invite students in, and the AP teachers are ready to basically walk them through what they need to do to be prepared for the AP exam in the next few weeks or whatever. I know we're not quite, but once we get to spring break, you will see them nearly every weekend, and many of the teachers hosting them.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a couple statements, more than questions. Are we going in around?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. First off, it's nice to see dogs and cats can play well together.
It was a coug and husky. We lost Ted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Second thing is, in talking to Mr. Steckler, whose son had just graduated from Jackson, how much the AP classes did prepare him for the rigor of the University of Washington, because I did ask about that. So it was nice to see. And then the fact of how many of our students are taking at least one class, that's absolutely outstanding, outstanding work. And then a question, Panorama, do parents get to see what their students did?
No, so the Panorama dashboard is for, right now it's for schools. So they use that in the process of school improvement planning around OTG and cell work. But no, parents do not. And it is an anonymous survey, so parents wouldn't see the individual scores.
Okay.
Like the Healthy Youth Survey.
Okay.
Any other questions for you? No. Carol?
Wonderful presentation, just absolutely filled with a lot of kind of eye-crossing data, but very, very good data. Really nice to see the engagement of so many students in AP, especially the underrepresented population. And I was just thinking back, my approach as a parent when my kids were in school was, take AP because you can get college credit at a very reduced cost. So I was wondering, how do you engage students in AP that aren't maybe thinking of college? But slide number 47 just answered that question. And it's such a great statement that the AP courses help students just with their personal skills and their grit and their growth mindset and all sorts of different aspects of being successful later in life. So whatever student that was, they really summarized the advantage of AP very, very nicely.
And many students had similar things to say about having taken AP as well.
Yeah. It's just got to be a game changer for so many students who feel they can't do it, and then they get in there and they see that they can,
They do.
It's
They
really,
do.
really exciting to see the work in that area.
And some of them forget that maybe they were excluded at one point. I've had that conversation where they didn't realize even they had been recruited. And I think that's a wonderful place to be in too, when you get to see that too.
Yeah, and even a staff member said how their
Change their mind.
attitude had changed.
Carol Taylor.
Yeah, really interesting. So
Just
great
to
work.
add to that, since we give the PSAT to all sophomores, from that, students get the AP potential letter. So the College Board analyzes their scores and gives them a list of classes that they have the highest potential of being successful in. And so that addition of the PSAT has contributed to AP because we have students who maybe weren't considering it, and then they get this letter in. It helps them to see that they can be successful.
Jane, I don't know if this would be something that would actually have a connection, but have we done any of that tracking for students who take the PSAT, do well on it? How many of them actually go on to college? And I guess it'd be interesting if you could separate those that didn't look like they were going to take that path and then changed their mind. It'd be an interesting sort of...
Probably a lot of indicators that influence that measurement, grades.
Because I think the PSAT does open that door for a lot of kids too, yeah. Anyway, thank you, great presentation.
Yeah. I was curious, on slide 26, AP qualifying scores, just in terms of how our district compares to state or other, I guess I need a frame of reference for, I mean, the obviously huge celebration with the increases there.
Yes, so that is in the AP report on our website. I don't have it at the, I mean, I could pull it up on our website, but we do have that information, I guess really quickly.
Glad you're doing this.
It goes right to it.
And if you have insomnia tonight, I recommend this report. AP qualifying.
A little light reading there for later.
Light reading.
I actually think I've seen this. This has been in a Freddie report, I think.
Yes.
I did peruse through it. Not every detail.
The 60.8%.
Yep.
I didn't read every detail.
State and national. A greater percentage of EPS students earned qualifying scores than those at the state, national, or globally. Statewide was 60%, nation 57.6, globally 58.
Those are of students taking
AP exams.
AP, yeah, okay. So a little bit higher. God, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last year's data.
Especially because we're really encouraging so much diversity and mix. And then I kind of wanted to just ask a little bit about why kids don't take the AP exam, because, you know, I used to think that it was, I'm like, oh, if they take the class, they should take the exam. And I've since started asking a lot of questions, and I hear things like, you know, they took the, they got the college and the high school credit for it, and so the AP exam results weren't really relevant, I think, to some kids. And so I guess as we head down the path of more kids need to be taking AP, my question is, which kids? You know, do we kind of look at those that truly, you know, and then honestly, as a parent, I've had to write a check for AP exams recently. And when your kids have a couple of them, it adds up really fast. And I know that we have support for students of poverty, but if you fall just above that line, it's got to be really hard on some of those families. I mean, that's like a couple pairs of shoes, or, you know, it's a lot of money.
Yes.
So, you know, as we look at doing things like, I shared this with Dr. Cohn, eliminating athletic participation fees, I would like to also see us do something on the academic side, whether it's college and high school or AP, and find ways to help alleviate some of those costs. Maybe it's half or something, you know.
Yep.
But sort of, so top one. And then lastly, I just wanted to ask you if we have any conversations with students about how to improve that welcome barrier. I know that you have some kids that do the AP Roadshow and they help draw in other kids, but I also know that there can potentially be some conflicts in kids that believe they should be in those classes and kids that don't believe they should be in those classes. And how do we work on that kind of culture sharing and get the kids, you know, I feel like once you explain to kids, you know, I think they're more compassionate than maybe we give them credit for at times, that if they really understood the difference it makes, that they might be more welcoming. And I just wonder if we ever have that conversation with the students themselves versus the adults encouraging.
There are teachers who have had those conversations. I think the welcoming, because the survey data comes also with narratives from the students taking the surveys. So there are questions that lead to that as a response, but then you also see many students report out what some of that welcoming means, and it means some different things. It can mean that they don't think they're going to fit in with the kids that are there, right? There's already a clique, they don't think they belong. Maybe they believe those kids won't be welcoming. Maybe they have not been welcoming. I mean,
That's kind of my question
pieces of
is
that.
how do you address those kids to create the welcoming environment?
And part of that is around the work that we do with teachers, right? To frame and stage classes in a way where we work through those things, both directly and indirectly, by setting up scenarios where you don't have the same kids responding to everything, that you have an inclusive voice, that you step forward even out of the classroom to welcome each student in literally into your classroom, that the way that you shaped assignments is actually in a way where you're not lending, grades off to one group over another. And many times it's very subtle things, but many of the AVID strategies, which come out in many other programs as well, where we get at student voice around fishbowl, Socratic seminar, philosophical chairs, mean that different voices are being heard. And I think initially, those were very hard for many of our teachers, and they can be, but we've also found that many teachers experiencing those, it changes the dynamic of the students working with other students and how peers work together.
Yeah.
And then the boot camps and so forth, where you have many students interacting with each other even outside of the class, has been very helpful. Yeah. So it's both direct and in many indirect ways, meaning how the class is structured and scaffolded for all students. So it's happening in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
And then we have had recruitment from students to actually directly say, you're welcome, we want to see you in there, that kind of thing.
And I think continuing to message the benefits of AP, how it as economic development, really, how it raises the bar for everyone, which raises the bar for our society, essentially, that it would be a good message for parents to hear too sometimes, that it's all inclusive. Yes. Well, thank you. Does anyone have any further questions or student representative?
I very much enjoy the AP class I'm in. If I tell anyone who will listen to take them, because they're just...
So we need her out.
Yeah, they're so rewarding in that you feel like you're actually learning things that you can utilize. I find myself in my history class analyzing the rhetoric that someone used in a speech, and that's not at all required or even thought of by a lot of people, but I have the honor of knowing how to do that, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I've also, I try to be as welcoming as possible. I don't ever see anyone that I don't try to smile at or talk with, but I can definitely understand how many would feel that it's a you can only do this if you're the smartest of the smart, because AP just sounds kind of scary to a lot of kids I know. But absolutely, I think with especially all the work that people are doing in the Saturday classes I saw, it's super cool, and it's super helpful in getting kids to see that it's a thing for everyone, and everyone can do it and can succeed. So I definitely think you're doing great work with that. It would encourage me to do it.
Yeah, a lot of people do it.
Use your microphone.
I was very happy to hear that. AVID strategies for our AP teachers. Is this something that will be extended to all AP teachers? Do they take it during AP's Institute in the summertime so they can learn about strength? Because usually you don't have every teacher in the district going through AVID strategies.
We had 3 AVID trainings last year, and there are 68 AP teachers, and 53 of them attended the sessions around AVID. In addition, we have had many, not all of them, attend AVID Summer Institutes in the past, and also AVID Path trainings, which is more local and is really a Friday and a Saturday. Many of them attend. I don't know the exact number from the fall, but that's been over the series of years. So we actually have, and another piece is that our administrators in the schools balance out an AVID schedule with an AP class. So when they are growing their AP program, they're often selecting from teachers who do already have AVID in their back pocket. So we have that added advantage.
That's great.
And it was very helpful to hear, Hunter. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
all.
it. At this time, we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we will reconvene at 6:17. Is that correct? That's where she wants to go. Good.
Welcome, I worked very hard on it.
Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started again. I'm shaving 30 seconds off our 15-minute break so that we can keep on task here. So we are moving to section 11.0, information and discussion, and tonight we have a guest in the house, Mr. Dan Steele, to give us a legislative update, and I believe Jeff Moore is going to introduce, or?
I think you just.
Okay. Mr. Steele, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Cohen. Mr. Moore and Dr. Cohen asked me to give you a legislative report. The session ended just a couple of weeks ago. We're very thankful about that. But he wanted me to give kind of an overall summary of the legislative session. Given the time and the importance of the new Education Funding Plan Bill 6362 being adopted, I'm going to almost solely focus on this bill. I know you also have copies of This Week in Olympia, the most recent edition, the Sine Die edition, walk through fairly comprehensively the budget details as well as 6362, more details than what I'm going to talk about tonight. So you've got that as written materials, and I'm also going to try and fly through this as quickly as I can so there's an opportunity for questions about this or anything else. So again, what I'm going to talk about is 6362, which was the fix bill for 2242, the education funding plan that was adopted last year. I also have a link to a more full presentation that actually provides context of 2242 and shows what occurred in 2242 and then the changes made in 6362. I pulled all those slides out, though, again, for time. And then also there's a link to the actual bill, which I encourage all of my members to read. Whether or not you want to read that, that's up to you. But I encourage all of my members to read it because I think it's important to know what the legislature actually said in black and white, what the new law is. So let me just kind of fly through here. And remember last year, 2017, the legislature spent a lot of time dealing with the education funding plan that was required from the court clear back in 2012. Took them a long time to get where they needed to go, but they actually finally adopted House Bill 2242. The purpose of the bill, as they stated, was to realize the promise of two previous bills they had adopted, House Bill 2261, House Bill 2776. I'm not going to talk about those at all. We've talked about that a lot, and the last time I was up here had a lengthy conversation about those two bills. But in short, those were the bills that the legislature adopted to redefine basic education and develop a new funding system because they saw the McCleary case going through the courts, and most legislators realized we're going to lose this case. So instead of waiting for somebody to tell us what to do, why don't we solve this problem, kind of head the court off at the pass and take care of this problem before they do it. The unfortunate thing, whether those bills were good or bad, they didn't fully implement them, which is why they lost the McCleary case and we had to deal with it. So the bill actually fulfills, in their eyes, 2261, 2776. The bill does a number of different things, but to boil it down, it revises and increases state salary allocations for all education staff, revises state and local education funding contributions. Clever way of saying they actually implemented the levy swap that we've been concerned about for a number of years. And they also included a bunch of new accountability and transparency provisions because the legislature said if we're going to have to provide you more money, billions of dollars, we're going to make sure that you have more accountability and more transparency, even though I think we're the most accountable entity in state government there is. But they said, we're going to give you $1. We want to know exactly how you're going to spend that money. So they included a bunch of new transparency provisions. So I'm going to walk through, again, the different areas of 2242 and what 6362 did in terms of fixing salary allocations, levies and local effort assistance, collective bargaining agreements, accountability and transparency, and a new health benefit system. So I'm going to walk through those different buckets and talk about what 6362 is all about. The first thing in terms of salary allocations, you remember that in 2242, they provided half the full funding for salaries in 2018 and the remainder in 2019. The court basically said 2242 is everything we asked you to do, except for you didn't meet our deadline of September 1st, 2018. You need to fully fund salaries by September 1st, 2018. So the court retained jurisdiction in the case, maintained the contempt order, maintained the sanctions. So one of the first things the legislature did was actually accelerate the payments for educator salaries. And I put quotes around full funding. We don't necessarily think it's full funding, but full funding as defined by the legislature to September 1st, 2018. So they provided about $970 million specifically for salaries in 2018. And by the way, as I'm going through this, if you do look at the bill, at the end of all of these points, it shows the section number, so you can actually find the section pretty easily if you just want to go to those different areas. So the other thing is regionalization has been a major issue. We think the regionalization was improperly implemented. It was flawed to begin with. So one of our major pushes was to change regionalization. Well, they actually adjusted regionalization, but the minor change that they made to regionalization, it positively impacts 6 districts. Not that big of a deal. For those 6 districts, great for them. But it doesn't help Everett, doesn't help Tacoma, doesn't help Spokane, doesn't help anybody else. Just those 6 districts. Staff mix in the salary allocation model, a major push for us to say we need a staff mix factor so we can actually provide the uniformity and continuity across the state. The legislature said we did away with that and we're not going to talk about bringing it back. However, they did implement this new experience factor, which provides 4% for districts if you have a certificated instructional staff median above the statewide average, and also if you have CIS advanced degrees above bachelor degrees, a ratio above the statewide average. Again, this is a positive thing. It's not quite what we were looking for, but it is a positive thing, but it only impacts 56 districts. Doesn't help Everett, doesn't help many of the large districts. The largest district that actually gets supported by this is Olympia School District. Virtually all of the remaining 56 districts are small, rural, eastern Washington districts. Again, good for them, doesn't help you at all. As I mentioned to Caroline before I started, the 2017 was all about 2242. 2018 was about fixing 2242. I think 2019 is going to be all about fixing 6362. So we're going to continue on this train for a long time. Also, beginning in 2023-24, salary allocations and regionalizations have to be rebased every 4 years. Originally, this was in 2242, having rebase every 6 years. So this is a good thing, so we don't get locked into the system for the next 30 years as we were before. Also, the legislature asked to review the inflationary measure to determine what is most representative of actual market experience. Remember that they moved the consumer price index as our inflationary factor to now be the implicit price deflator. And the main reason the legislature did that is it's cheaper. So they save money by giving you a lower inflationary factor. This is the chart that shows salary allocations out of 2242. And it really shows 3 things. The first one is it shows the current system, 2016-17, 2017-18, moves to a brand new system in 2019-20 and 2020-21, and in the transition year in the middle in 2018-19. You notice there's no salary compliance provided whatsoever. You're provided an average salary of $59,000 approximately for CIS, and then these things get adjusted as we go out. The new chart from 63-62, because they provided this extra $970 million, you can see now they've actually included the new salary compliance, which is very simple. The minimum is $40,000, a mandatory minimum 10% after 5 years of experience, and a maximum of 90. Now, I tell you, it's very simple. It's not necessarily simple to implement for school districts, but it's very simple to actually see what the different steps are. You can also see the average CIS salary goes up to about $65,000. Again, that $970 million provides a number of dollars. 2018-19, again, is a transition year, and it limits the amount of salary you can actually provide to your local employees, both in the in all three classes, the certificate instructional staff, classified staff, and also administrative staff. It's limited to CPI, the Seattle CPI for the 2018-19 school year. So you can provide increases, but it's limited to that CPI. So it's not just a free-for-all. There are limits. But they also added a series of exceptions for experience and education step increases. If you have additional salary changes because you have more staff due to enrollment, and then also national board bonuses and a couple other things. It also says if a district CIS total average is less than the statewide average, you can actually move up to that statewide average. For certificated administrative staff salaries, the average allocation is about $97,000. And last year in 2242, there was a very convoluted limit that was in place. We went to the legislature and said, this isn't going to work for us. And we heard from virtually every legislator and legislative staffer we talked to, that's not what we meant. And we said, well, it doesn't matter what you meant. The law that you adopted, the law that the governor signed, the law that's now a part of the statutes, this is what it says. And they all said, okay, well, we'll just repeal that, which was a good thing. It provided a little more flexibility for us. The first bill that was introduced actually repealed the section. Well, at the end of the day, they provided a new limit, which says that if school district spends local revenues for administrative enrichment, it can't be more than 25% of the total certificated administrative staff salary expenditures. When we first saw this language, we were very concerned about it, thought it was going to have a huge impact on school districts. The more we look at it, the more we analyze it, it appears that most districts are going to be okay. It's going to be the very small districts that are going to have more difficulties than that. So I'm encouraging all of our members, as you're working through your budgets, if this does have a serious impact, this will be one of the things we'd want to go back and actually talk to the legislature about next year. So as you're working your budgets, please let us know if this does have a serious impact. You remember there was a hold harmless feature in 2242. We were very concerned that we were all losing money. We were all losing local levies. And the legislature said, don't worry about it. We're going to provide hold harmless provisions in there. In 2242, the hold harmless provision was specifically for salary allocations. Didn't deal with any other funding, just salary allocations. And we were concerned school districts were going to be losing massive dollars all across the state. So they actually came forward and said, well, we're going to solve this problem. This language, they actually put in the budget notes that came out in the fall. Well, the concern with budget notes is same thing. Budget notes have no force of law, so it doesn't matter what the legislature is providing in terms of intent. The actual language that they passed didn't say this. So the governor, in his wisdom, said, I'm going to solve this problem, and I'm going to take that language from the budget notes, and I'm going to put it in my budget request. And actually, as you see at the bottom, it was actually adopted in the operating budget, which shows a total revenue hold harmless, so state basic education allocation plus your local levy plus local effort assistance if you receive it. If that's less than what you receive before, then you'll be held harmless. The concern we have with this language is that last line that I italicized and bolded says very specifically, under the law as it existed on January 1st, 2017. Now, last time I was up, I remember we talked a lot about the levy cliff. Well, the levy cliff solved the problem by delaying the levy cliff 1 year. The problem, though, is the levy cliff bill passed last year in March. So we are assuming in January 1st, 2017, there was an assumption there would be a levy cliff, and we were concerned that the hold harmless they were providing was actually based off the levy cliff dollars as opposed to dollars that you currently had. So we're very concerned about this language. While there is additional language in 6362 that makes it very clear that we're talking about 2017-18 allocations, and it's a 2-year hold harmless for 2018-19 and 2019-20. And again, it's total revenue, basic education allocation, levy, and LEA. Now, the concern we have is this language passed as well as the budget language. So we've notified the governor, encouraged him to keep this language in 6362, and requested that he veto the other language to make sure that we don't have any confusion about when this hold harmless is taken care of. We don't know when this is going to happen. It'll be in the next week or so, but hopefully he will follow through. I've talked to his staff, and they understand the issue, and they saw the same problem, and I think they're going to help us out on that. There's also, just for your information, it's interesting that there's $5 million for hold harmless for districts all across the state. And then there's another $12 million appropriation specifically for one district south of here called Tacoma. And I can talk about the issue later if you would like to. I just want to let you know that that's hanging out there. So levies and local effort assistance, a major issue that we dealt with over the last couple of years, and I know this was a major issue for you. The first issue the legislature did is they increased the state property tax to take care of this problem. Well, I wouldn't ever say the legislators admitted they made a mistake, but they actually said, we're going to actually reduce the property tax. Increased by about 82 cents, and they're not actually decreasing it by 30 cents. A couple of important things to note, though. This is done in 2019. So the spike that occurred in 2018 stays in place. People are still going to be paranoid and upset and everything else. In 2019, it'll drop down part of what they increased. What legislators aren't putting in their press releases, patting themselves in the back for this, is that in 2020 and 2021, goes back up to $2.70. So there's the spike in 2018, it drops a minor part, and then it jumps back up in 20 and 21. So if you're going out for your levies, you're still going to have to explain to voters why your property tax bill is still increasing. And that was done by a separate bill, 6614. So I think you're aware of the levy cap. I know you've talked about it a lot here. It's $1.50 per thousand of assessed valuation or $2,500 per student, whichever is less. There was a number of bills or amendments in place that would have actually changed that to the greater of, providing districts the option of what to do. That language never went anywhere, unfortunately, and so there's no specific policy changes to the 2242 levy or levy equalization caps. So another thing that we're going to have to deal with in 2019 that's going to be a major issue we're going to go forward with. But they did make a number of other changes that are actually positive. The levy and LEA caps actually increase annually by CPI, not by IPD. So that's a positive, but also throw out the negative. Remember, for the last 30 years, the legislature said we can't provide you enough money, so we're going to give you more of an ability to ask your voters. Well, they increase your salaries by IPD, but allow your levy to increase by CPI, providing you more of an ability to actually provide salaries and other things. So there's a positive and a negative. You have to take the good with the bad. They also removed all the references to resident students. I'm not sure if that was an issue up here, but in the calculations for levy and LEA, those resident student definitions are taken out, and that's a positive thing for many other districts. They also took out the references to transportation levies and clarified that transportation levies and capital levies don't have the same levy limitations as our new enrichment levies. I think that was fairly known, but they actually clarified and made it straight and clear. Collective bargaining agreements is going to be a huge issue, and I will let you know. I want to have time for questions at the end. There's going to be a lot of questions I'm not going to be able to answer because there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of grayness, just as much, if not more, as there was in 2242. The first thing, though, in 2018, not 2019 as it was in 2242, the local revenues can only be used for documented and demonstrated enrichment. So because they provided all those new dollars, the $970 million, they're actually changing the acceleration for when you can only use local dollars. For time-based supplemental contracts, the hourly rate the district pays can't exceed the hourly rate for that particular staff member's basic ed hourly rate. This was a concern for us because there's a number of staff that don't have a quote-unquote hourly rate, and it might be more difficult to calculate. So they actually provided additional language that says for a supplemental contract that's not time-based, you have to actually document the duties, responsibilities, or incentives. And even though it's duties as opposed to time, responsibility, and incentives, which is a huge issue, this is very clear that TRI continues to live. A lot of folks assume that 2242 did away with TRI. Not true at all. It redefined it, changed it, adjusted it to a certain extent, and now it shows very clearly that you can actually provide additional dollars for duties, responsibilities, and incentives. You just have to actually document it. How that's going to be done, we'll have to work through that problem. So I mentioned the collective bargaining agreement, and we know that hard bargaining is coming. We thought hard bargaining was coming last year with 2242. Now that we have 6362, it's even more clear. This is a message that WA has actually sent to their own members, saying that we've won billions of dollars in new funding for education. And oh, by the way, most of it's for salaries, which is partially true, but they're actually claiming that all of it's for them. Then they say now is our opportunity to join together and negotiate not just competitive salaries or more pay, but significant or substantial pay raises. Then they also say to you, and this is where you need to be a little nervous, now is our time to go to our local school districts and push them for competitive professional salaries. And again, competitive professional salaries, that's a positive thing. But if you look at the bullet before, that's not really what they're talking about. They're talking about substantial pay raises, whether they be competitive or not. And that's a little frustrating. I won't say the teachers don't need more money, and I think everybody in this room probably would actually agree with that. But I think their attack on us of saying we need substantial pay raises is a little concerning. So accountability, transparency, again, because of the new dollars coming and because the legislature is so concerned that you're going to spend the money the wrong way, they've actually accelerated the requirement for the sub-fund, not in 2019, but September 1st, 2018. You have to establish a local sub-fund. OSPI has to adopt rules, not next year, but this year, on how you can actually implement that. Here's a problem for you, though. OSPI believes that they can't actually do this by September 1st, 2018, so they're asking the governor to veto this language. Unfortunately, the sub-fund language is actually linked up with other language in the bill that we actually like and need and want, so we haven't asked for a veto of the local district sub-fund. But if the OSPI gets their way, what it means is you have to implement and use a sub-fund, but OSPI isn't going to write the rules on how you're supposed to do that until next year. A little bit of a complicated situation that's very unfortunate. Beginning with taxes levied and collection for 2018, not 2020 as it was in 2242. Local enrichment levies have to be deposited in this sub-fund, and then also beginning 2018-19, as we said before, enrichment levies are restricted to just enrichment activities, and they're also subject to audits. And that's the other concern, that OSPI is not going to provide us any information, presuming they get their veto, but the auditor is going to come in and actually see whether or not you're spending money the way you're supposed to. A little bit complicated. Professional learning funds are also required to be specifically audited as your part of your regular school district audits from the state. And then health benefits. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but health benefits, you remember last year they implemented a new school employee benefit board similar to the public employee benefit board, but specifically for education employees. All of our employees have to be moved over there. 6362 didn't provide any specific changes to SEB, but the operating budget does provide about $30 million to actually implement the SEB. And then there were another series of clarifications in a separate bill, 6241. The first thing is that healthcare premiums for full family coverage can't exceed 3 times the coverage or the premiums for single employee only coverage. This was already a part of the law, but it put it in a different section and provided a little clarification. The next piece, a school employee, if they're anticipated to work full-time, 630 hours, they have to actually be eligible for coverage. That's the threshold that they have to meet to be eligible for coverage. And then the last piece is a little bit concerning for us. School districts, even though the SEB, the whole idea was to take off healthcare bargaining off your plates, which is a very positive thing. School districts, though, can go and bargain and provide supplemental benefits if those same benefits aren't provided by SEB. If there's a benefit you want to provide and it's provided by SEB, you have to go to SEB. If it's something different, you can actually provide it through a local bargain. And this last piece is a little concerning as well, that you can actually bargain for benefits for half-time or part-time employees that are working less than 630 hours. But if you provide benefits to them, you have to provide them full coverage. PEB right now for part-time employees, they provide full coverage even though they're only part-time employees. Healthcare Authority has basically said we're going to do the same thing for SEB. We're trying to work through that issue and see if we can get that changed. But right now, that's their theory, that's their thought, and that's where they're going to go. And then last, a series of other provisions that don't fall under those individual buckets. The special education excess multipliers increased by a minor piece. I know this was a major issue for your district, as well as all of the rest of the education community. What we're hoping is this is just the first step, not the last step, and we've been pushing legislators on that. Another issue that you fought for pretty hard, I think, K-3 class size compliance is going to be delayed for a year. You're still going to get the full allocation at 17-1, but you don't have to actually comply with that until September 1st, 2019. Remember, if you don't meet 17-1 at that point, you won't get your full allocation. And the legislature sort of understood that some districts aren't going to be able to get there in time. It also delays the implementation of professional learning days. Remember, there's 3 days, 1 in the first year, 2 in the second year, and 3 in the third year. The phase-in actually starts next year as opposed to this year. And there are also some proposal to limit early release and late arrivals. That was actually pulled out of the final bill, so that's status quo. I will tell you that I believe that this is going to continue to be an issue. I don't know if you guys use early, okay, you do. This is going to continue to be an issue, but at least for now, it's status quo, continue doing what you're doing. LAP allocations for high poverty schools is, instead of a yearly annual basis, is going to be implemented on a 3-year rolling average. So if you have 49% one year and you lose your LAP, and then you get 51% the next year and you get LAP, and then you go down to 49, this stops that roller coaster ride, hopefully, for LAP, making it a little bit more stable. It also creates a transportation alternate funding grant program for districts. Some legislators realize that their funding is not where it needs to be with people transportation funding, so they provided $20 million for this grant program for districts that have unique circumstances, including McKinney-Vento homeless students. And then the last thing, which I guess there's a couple more, highly capable programs have a series of issues, criteria. MSOC, even though it's for allocation purposes only, one of the line items is other supplies and library materials. They've actually split that now. So it's specifically other supplies and another line item, library materials. And again, kind of a head scratcher that if this is for allocation purposes only, what's it matter? But I will tell you the fact that they've separated them, if you're not spending MSOC dollars specifically for library materials, they will probably come back and say, okay, now we're going to make you do it. So as you're doing your budgeting, something to think about. And then the last thing, this is a very major issue. It was a concept and an idea and a thought that we were assuming that WA may actually be coming to districts and talk about a 5.7-hour day. We know now that that's one of their strategies, that they're going to districts saying, by the way, we're going to work a 5.7-hour day. That's our basic education day. Anything above and beyond that is enrichment. We said no. There's other professional duties, meeting with teachers and professional collaboration and other things you have to do. So we had language drafted up as a part of this and got commitments in all 4 caucuses to actually specifically say instructional hours isn't the only duties that a teacher has. It's also these other professional duties, and listed some of them. Unfortunately, at the 11th hour, Chris Reichdahl came flying in and said, what we really need is a work group to discuss this. So there's a work group to actually define a school day. Not necessarily a bad thing, but let me talk about a couple of things that are bad. Number one, WA is very hard pushing the governor to say veto this section. We've actually encouraged the governor, this is a very important thing, please keep it in. The other bad thing is if our language was implemented, as soon as the governor signs 6362, it would be a part of the law. This, though, even if this work group comes up with the best recommendations ever possible, they don't get submitted until January, and then the legislature has to actually implement them, which is going to be February, March, April, whatever. So my question is, what do we do from March 20th to June next year? So we're hoping that the governor actually keeps this language in. We can at least tell teachers at the bargaining table, you know, this is going to be something that we're going to discuss. Let's not mess with this issue. We're encouraging all of our school districts to hold firm on that, whatever language you have. Some have 7.1 hours, some have 7.5, but there is a definition of a school day in most contracts. So I went a little bit over my time, but Madam President, if there's time for questions, I will take them.
I think we'd like to make time for questions.
Okay.
A great presentation. Thank you. Directors, what are your questions?
I've got a lot of questions, by the way, but
We all have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Unanswered, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody?
May I just start by thanking you? This is an outstanding review,
Thank you.
even with some of the fears that we now have, because as we've looked at our 4-year budget, our pitfalls on meeting those salary schedules,
Right.
as well as the scheduled cuts to what the salary schedule is. And that's a big concern, really, because how do you take money away from people that you've already given to them? And so I appreciate your comment that this coming legislative session is going to be a fix for the last one, and that this is probably
That's what we
a
hope, anyway.
very long path.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for the details.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
Can you, the 2-year hold harmless that you
Yeah.
spoke about on slide, was that 13, 12, something like that? So state revenues are going way up this year.
Right.
And our levies are not decreasing. So going into next year, does that mean that that sets the bar? I don't understand.
Well, it's our understanding, and it's a question what they're going to do in 1920. But for 18-19, they're going to use 17-18 as the base. Why they would use 17-18 for the base in 1920 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to have to work through that and get some clarification.
Okay.
Because you are getting additional dollars, but again, you're losing levies starting next year.
Right. And so that was kind of my next question is on the local levies, we are now held at $1.50, but we had voter approval for a higher amount.
Right.
If they go back next legislative session and they change it to the greater of the two,
Right.
when would that be enacted? How does that?
Well, there's a couple of different things. The presumption is for 2019 collection, you'd probably have to be limited to $1.50, so you'd probably have to roll back.
Right.
Beyond that, though, and I'm sure Mr. Moore has probably calculated this, but remember there's the increases, the annual inflationary increases based off of CPI. So in 2020, you have a 4-year levy?
Yes.
So it's 2020, 21, and 22, you'd actually be increasing what we could get. So $1.54, $1.60, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but you could actually collect more. But it depends on what the legislature actually adopted. If it was as simple as just the greater of, it would depend on when they adopted it. But I think regardless of what happens, unless there's a special session this year, my guess is for 2019, you'd probably have to roll back, and in the future years,
And then
you could
20,
increase.
beginning in 20, if they fixed it next year?
That's where we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was right.
You have your work cut out for you.
But I think, again, as I mentioned, somewhat flippantly, but I think very seriously, the issue of regionalization still has not been fixed. The issue of levies was not touched hardly at all.
Right.
In fact, it's interesting if you followed the process, and I know you get my newsletter, the the first iteration of the bill had a number of changes with levies. The Senate Ed Committee said, no, we're not going to deal with that right now, but they specifically put a paragraph that said, it's our intention to solve this problem in the 2018 session. It passed out of Ways and Means with that intention. And we're thinking, well, they're going to deal with this at some point in time. Well, when it passed off the Senate floor, they stripped out that language. So they didn't even fake to have the intent, but it's certainly a huge issue. So I think the salary allocation, the regionalization, is this experience factor the right thing? And even if it's the right thing, is it getting to the right people? So there's a number of issues still on the table. And I think, for me, it's going to be kind of a freaky thing because it's going to be deja vu for 105 days.
They did fix it for one district, though.
They did fix it for one, but I probably shouldn't have hammered so hard on that. But I will tell you, one of the issues, again, the levy of the greater of, Tacoma was one of the districts that was really pushing hard on that. And they pushed, I probably shouldn't talk publicly about this, but they pushed hard enough on that that it almost caved the entire bill in. And so at the end of the day, literally the 11th hour on Thursday of the last day of session, they came out and said, we're going to take out the levy stuff because it's killing all four caucuses trying to talk about this, but we're going to take care of Tacoma, and that's why they provided that $12 million for them. I'm sure you are fighting for that just as hard. Why you didn't get another $5 or $10 million, I don't know. But it's circumstances sometimes, and that's just what happened.
Talk about a freaky thing this is all becoming, but it's going to be very difficult for a school board.
It is.
When you start looking at the audit, our levy is going to be audited so that it ensures that we are paying for enrichment.
Right.
Yet the WEA is going out telling their members that we're going to get some substantial increase.
Right.
When you start looking at the definition of basic education, and you then look at our dollars that we have out of the levy for enrichment, how do you surmise that we can become a district that gives a substantial increase to our,
Here's one of the problems. We've been asking, and Jeff's been at the table pushing this for the last couple of years, but we've been asking, pleading, give us a definition of basic education. And what the legislature has done in 2242 and 6362 is very similar to what they did in the Basic Ed Act in 1977. And I'm paraphrasing, but they basically said, if we fund it, it's basic ed. If we don't, it's enrichment. So this issue of a loss in special ed, very clearly, the biggest, boldest, easiest thing to realize, it's basic education. And even if it wasn't basic ed here, it's a federal requirement. But the legislature has basically said, we know we're not funding you for special ed, just go ahead and use your levy dollars because it's enrichment. And how districts can actually sit at the bargaining table and try and maintain consistency and controls and whatever else we want to talk about when the theory from the legislature is if we didn't fund it, it's enrichment. It's going to be the wild, wild west. And I really, I feel for superintendents and board members that are going to have to actually deal with this, especially folks like you. Jeff just said you're starting tomorrow. It's a pretty fearful situation, and we're going to do the best we can to help our members, and I know WASD is at the table too. And I will tell you something else on that same issue. One of the reasons that WA has been so effective in the last 10, 15 years is that they're unified. WA sends out a message from Federal Way, and you have different uniserves, and they have a little bit different opinions because of who's actually doing the bargaining. But by and large, the foundation message is consistent and uniform. But when they talk to you, and then they talk to Lake Washington, they talk to Shoreline, they talk to North Shore, it's all different. So we've been doing what we can to figure out a way to actually provide some consistency on our side of the table. And we, along with WASDA and WASBO, the school business officials, have been meeting with the major bargainers in the state, with the State Personnel Association, with Employment Relations Negotiations Network. You guys work with Foster, or what have Porter. Yeah, Buzz. I know you work with Buzz. He and his firm have been at the table as well as some other folks. And we've been actually trying to figure out, walk through 2242, now 6362, and provide some continuity and some messages that we can provide to all 295 of our districts, because even though there's only reopeners in about 90 to 100 districts, open bargaining, there's going to be openers in virtually all 295 districts. And so we're trying to figure out how to provide that message to our members, to provide continuity. We're also very concerned, first district that signs a contract, it's going to have ripple effects throughout the entire state. And so if you guys are first in line, by the way, hopefully you do the right thing. So I don't know how to answer you other than to say this is a very concerning thing, but it's the reality we have to live with, and we're going to do the best we can to help our folks and try to hold firm as best you can.
Thank you. Very detailed and very necessary and very clear.
Thank you.
We don't know where we're going. As a state, as a state, the big picture.
We're in a brave new world.
Brave new world.
Yeah.
Any other questions, or are we ready to move on?
I just have one clarifying issue, though, because I'm not defending WASDA, but they do, as members, we've spent a whole day voting on what the priorities are going to be.
Right.
But then every district school board superintendent is different.
Right.
Because of our population that is different from Lake Washington, that is different from Tacoma, where the classroom, I'm not disparaging teachers at all, but the classroom is a different place than the whole district.
Sure.
And I don't know, I think we do. When we go down to Olympia for our day, we're mostly speaking about Everett. And so maybe that is a flaw in the ointment, but it really is, I think, what our picture is right now.
Yeah. Although I will tell you, Dr. Cohen sent me the board docs for this meeting today, and it listed out our agenda, it listed out the local funding work group, WASDA, PTA, I think WAs was in there, the whole alphabet soup groups. And I looked at your agenda, which I had seen a long time ago, but I looked at it again, and your agenda was pretty darn consistent. In fact, using some of the same terminology, the same language as our agenda, and I think that was intentional on yeah. So when I was working with the school directors and then moved over to the school administrators, one of my philosophies was, we're all going to be different, big and small, and east and west, and urban and rural. There's always going to be differences. But if we can do what we can to focus in on the things that we agree with, everything else is going to fall into place. If we're all at the table saying we need an increase in the special ed multiplier, well, we won on that. We're all saying K-3 class size we need more dollars and we're not ready to go. We won on that, at least partially. Some of these other bigger issues, I think for the most part, we're on the same page. And there's always going to be some differentiations and outliers, especially in my situation. I have to deal with 295 districts, and WASDA has to deal with 1,477 elected officials in their own right. But I think if we focus in on the things that we all agree on, those are the major issues anyway. And I think if we do that, everything else will fall into place. And I don't think it's a big deal if Everett focuses in on their little piece, so long as the overarching issues are all similar or the same. So.
Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. We do really appreciate it.
You've got my contact information if you need to contact me. I know I talk to Dr. Cohen fairly regularly, but anybody else can call me as well.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we move to our second information item, 11.02, the communications plan update. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on our work towards completing our communication plan this year, which is aligned to our strategic plan and our annual operating plan. This evening, we hope to accomplish 3 things, and that's review examples of the work toward accomplishing the goals that we have in our communication plan, and that does include 2018 bond and levy communication. We're going to review the 2016 bond and capital levy communication and work this year, as well as share planned communication that we have through the end of the school year with you. We continue to be focused around our key messages about growth, so current and projected growth and the impacts of that growth and planning for it. Success, about the great things and the good things happening in our districts and working towards inviting our community in through our communication. And then community, focusing on our community and community partnerships that we have. And so our work is centered around strategies that are guiding our work and our goal towards effectively communicating and engaging our community by using clear, consistent language and key messages in our communication, by using storytelling to make our communication more student-centered and help draw our community into our classroom. To support proactive school communication, to focus and increase our social media engagement, and to gather feedback from our staff, families, and our community. So what we did in August as part of our planning is we've identified monthly communication themes to help guide our work. So September was Ready to Learn, launching that school year off right. October was technology and focusing on the deployment of one-to-one devices at our high schools and elementary. And November we focused on growth as we were ramping up and preparing for the board decision on whether you were going to run a bond and of course the levy. And December through February was really focused on bond and levy communication and career pathways. As you know, for that full period, we focused primarily on sharing that factual information about the bond and levy, clarifying misinformation. Now that that campaign is over, we're focused back on our monthly themes. So March is one-to-one technology again. That is a shift from what we had identified in August because of all the focused communication that we did on career pathways and innovation during the bond and levy campaign. April is citizenship. May is music and the arts, and we'll be focusing on graduation in June. Communication is a shared responsibility across the district. We're going to provide you with some highlights, though, specifically from the communication department. Newsletters are an important way that we reach our families in the district and those who do not have students in schools. We've updated the design of our schools to freshen it up, and we've incorporated more infographics to make it more scannable for our readers. So we're channeling that USA Today style, and we've completed 2 editions this year. And we reach 60,000 residents, give or take, and more than 2,000 staff members through our Schools publication. And it is one of the top ways that we reach our community members. Additionally, we have our In Touch electronic newsletter that's typically distributed twice a month, but it is in alignment with our school board meetings. We've completed 12 issues to date, and we reach 8,700 people through that. We do have an average of a 23% open rate with our e-newsletter and about a 5 to 10% click rate. And a click-through rate is if someone clicks on a link that takes them back to someplace else, which typically is the district website. What this shows us is our readers really are looking for easy information. So what we're working to do is make our articles shorter and more visual. Our website is still a very important communication tool for the school district, and it does serve as a repository for information. We continue to work to improve on the design and the functionality of the website because there are thousands and thousands of pages. So our focus is really trying to make it more engaging through images and stories and syncing it with the new mobile app. It is a work in progress. Our web traffic does peak during the year. That's no surprise because it fluctuates with the school year. And we've worked out monthly averages. So what you're looking at on your screen is really monthly average of website traffic. So on average, we have more than 221,000 visitors to the site with almost 640,000 visits. And on average, 35% of those are new visitors to our site. We did launch the mobile app. So we are excited to say that we are very close to reaching our annual goal of 4,500 downloads. We're just shy by 43, and the majority of those are school followers. So it's not a surprise for us that the top uses for our mobile app are for grades and for notifications. And then we have developed over the years very strong relationships with our local media. And we've worked to garner coverage for key district priorities. That does include 2016 bond and levy projects, of course 2018 bond and levy, and then of course student and staff successes and features. So this year we've 224 stories, and that's across the spectrum for media. We've reached 33.9 million people. And 70% of the coverage that we've received as a school district is either neutral or positive. And the coverage has about a $314,000 advertising equivalency. Social media, that is a focus for us, and we've incorporated that into all of our communication efforts. We do have a very strong and robust program, and we're looking to expand that. So far this year, we have almost 1,600 posts related to Everett Public Schools. That doesn't mean we posted it, but it's everything in general, and if someone is referenced to us. We have a 1.6 million average monthly reach. And 88% of the content is positive or neutral that we can track. So this, of course, doesn't include closed groups, but this would be open groups that we have access or pages that we have access to. Our engagement is increasing, and we've gained 525 likes on Facebook this year alone. But overall, when looking at what our goals are for the end of the year, we're at a 60% of reaching our goal of increasing social media engagement by 20% by the end of the year. And then, as I mentioned, a majority of our focus this year has been on sharing factual information about the bond and levy, and our communications department has done more to communicate in this election than in previous campaigns, and that stands true for the district overall. Some key highlights that we have are the website. During the time, primarily January through February was the highest traffic for our district website. We had an average of 450 views of the main pages. Additionally, we did send out the informational mailers to our community residents. That reaches 60,000 people, as well as providing informational handouts. About 3,500 of the bond and levy informational mailer were shared, as well as the career pathways. And district administrators presented information about the district and the bond and levy to approximately 140 internal and external groups from the end of September through February. And we did include career pathways information and interviews with industry leaders in the winter edition of the Our Schools publication. We also worked to provide factual information about the bond and levy to our local media and to also generate coverage. Additionally, we did target sharing information through social media. Of course, that is factual information, and we were very active in January. This isn't specifically bond and levy communication, it's our overall communication, but we reached 3.69 million people in January and 4.8 million in February, so we were very active. Additionally, we created informational videos on career pathways. In the bond and levy, we engaged 11,000, or we had 11,000 views of the videos, and folks watched 2,215 minutes, or 50 minutes of it. A big priority for the communication department is communicating about the 2016 bond and levy projects. So I'm just going to share with you some highlights of the work that we've done this year to support that. We've completed 8 videos this year, 3 on technology, 1 on growth, and 4 on project updates. And what we're really working to do is to connect with the schools to incorporate students in the storytelling. It gets a little boring, although the drawings and renderings are fabulous. We're looking towards providing that student and staff perspective as well. And then with the website, so where we're at so far is we have about 6,800 views to the 2016 bond and capital levy web pages. The majority are at elementary 18, and that's not a surprise because there's more activity there, and almost 1,400 views of North. And as I mentioned before, we're really trying to provide information in multiple platforms and direct folks back to the website for additional information. Content is regularly updated, but we're really working to incorporate the stories, the video, the images onto the website to make it more attractive. So this is a major focus for us for improving our engagement. And then also with In Touch, our electronic newsletter that goes out to constituents, we have a specific section as part of In Touch that provides updates on our bond and levy projects. As well as in our schools, we've provided specific updates in 3 out of the 4 editions that we've done since the passage of the bond and levy in April 2016. Social media is a main area where we're pushing information out about this topic. So we've focused with Facility Fridays and then also with technology. So to date, we have 58 posts, and that's for this school year. And we have about a 17,000 reach on a monthly basis. And what we're focusing on is shifting with technology to that one-to-one and launching a one-to-one technology campaign through social media. And then with media, we just are continuing to work to get more media coverage regarding the projects. We've had an update on safety and security. We've had an update on North, and we are currently working with the Herald on one-to-one technology features with the pilot schools and showing our community what's happening in the classroom. So we're very excited about that. And then as far as upcoming communication through the end of the school years, our schools will be going out to the community at the end of April. It will include the 2016 bond and levy updates. It's going to include the feature piece on one-to-one technology as well as some safety information and innovation expo. We're also picking up where we left off. If you remember in the communication plan, we were hoping to launch Space to Learn in October, but unfortunately that didn't work. So we are launching that in April with an e-newsletter. And Space to Learn is really going to provide updates on the 2016 bond and levy projects. It's going to provide information about the growth and what we're doing to address the growth, as well as academic needs and opportunities in providing students and staff of a space to learn. We're also looking at a mailer for community. It costs about $15,000, so depending on budget, we'll do 1 to 2 per year. And then we're also going to continue those monthly technology features and videos. So we really want to make sure that we are highlighting and featuring the one-to-one technology in the classroom. So parallel to what we're doing with our monthly themes, we will be sharing what's happening in technology, so features each month. So March is Everett and Sequoia High School, and then April through June, we're going to feature the elementary schools. And then, of course, we're going to continue the features based on themes, so citizenship, music and arts in May, and graduation in June. And then what's also on our schedule to complete in May is our staff survey on communications and ways that they receive the information in top ways. We also ask questions about how they engage on social media. And then we will be gathering parent and community input on our district performance in early June. And this helps us to evaluate and to inform our work. And then we're also exploring doing an annual report, which to the community to share highlights on our financial management, but then also key district priorities and our performance. So what we did was we did provide you with a couple of samples from other school districts. And these are actually winners in last year's WASPRA, which is Washington School Public Relations Association, Publications and Electronic Media Awards. So at your leisure, please take a look, and we'd appreciate your input on that. So I have 23 seconds left. So we just very quickly reviewed for you some of the work that we're doing towards the communication plan, focusing on the 2018 bond and levy communication, as well as 2016 bond and levy projects. And we're just continuing to implement those communication strategies to support our work. So what questions can I answer for you?
Thank you very much. That was a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot
Directors,
going on.
what questions do you have?
May I ask?
Yes, please go ahead.
Question. Thank you. It was very detailed and I enjoyed it very much. And I do like the updating of our schools because if it stays the same, people just take it and they may not even open it. So when you make it different and you change it and you update it, there's that tendency or hopefully that hope that people are going to open it and read what's inside. So that's really good that we're doing that. Anything new in the mailbox, hopefully gets read. I have a question on page 8. You talk about the communication and engagement newsletters, and you talk about the open rate and the click rate.
Yes.
When you mention things like that, what does that mean? I.e., what's considered good, what's considered, we should do better, or, anything like that?
It depends on your organization. And so for us, we've been fairly steady at about a 23 to 25% open rate. It also does depend on how many individuals you have that you're distributing the information to. So it could be anywhere from 20 to 40% for an internal. Ours is external, so we're about industry standard.
For industries, and when you talk about a click rate, a 5 to 10% click rate,
Yeah.
what's considered good, what's considered bad, what's considered you should try more,
It's subjective. However, we would like to improve and increase both our open rate and our click rate because we're taking a look when we get the analytics of what are people clicking on, and that helps inform us. We know if it's school-based videos, so we're trying to incorporate those things. And we're also trying to, with our language, make it shorter, more concise to grab people's attention as well. But it is subjective.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For me, and I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but isn't there a difference though between views and then unique views?
Yes.
Because we might have, especially during the bond and levy, during the presentations, a lot of people showing people versus unique people. So do you have those numbers with you or?
Not yet. So the analytics that we have is through January, and February is an important month.
Okay.
So what we just have right now are page views.
Okay.
But we'll have that soon.
Perfect, thank you. The other thing is, in looking at these, some of the feedback that I've received, again, not an expert on the bond or levy, why it failed, but some people did talk to me about our newsletter and the message of trust us, see the awards we've won, see how financially sound we are, see how responsible we are, that some of the concerns, and I heard this from a number of people, but where is our money going? Where is the money going at North? Where is the money going for this? How much does this really cost? So as I glance at the Sunnyside annual report, they do give a lot of detail. It's a pretty big report, so I don't know if it's mailed or if it is electronic, about really what things cost. And I don't know, again, how the community would receive that, but if we could clarify, especially construction costs going up at this rate, this is this much. I mean, this is how much it really does cost to do the work we do. I like what Sunnyside did. Great presentation. I like the opportunities, and especially the new newsletter about the space to learn. That looks lovely.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Space to learn. I like that.
Carl, do you have any comments or questions?
I'm not sure I understand. It's on slide 15. The social media reach, the statistics of 4 million and then almost 5 million. What is that exactly?
So when you reach someone, that is someone who has seen it. And that includes our Facebook, our Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. So they may not be a friend of ours on Facebook, but by us pushing out information, they have seen it in some way in their news feed. So that's what reach is. And so we're tracking not only on how many people engage, but how many people we also reached. So that's to show you January and February was incredibly busy with engagement with our community.
I guess the reason I'm questioning or asking about that is those numbers are just so much larger than, say, the next slide where we had 11,000 views of a video.
And that's important to note. So with that, it is our overall engagement. So that's with every post and share that we've done. It isn't specific to the 2018 bond and levy. We're still culling that information out.
Oh, I see.
So I'm sorry for not clarifying that.
I see. Okay. It's still a huge number.
It
It's
is.
just like,
It is.
you know, it's amazing that you reach that many people. I was just trying to imagine that. I think some of the most meaningful communication community-wide is what shows up in the Herald. And there have been a lot of really positive stories lately, like the one you mentioned earlier today, Tracy, about the Cascade Malala event and all. So I personally always enjoy those stories, and I'm glad that we have such a good relationship with them to
we're very
help
fortunate.
broadcast our district's successes.
I think that's it. Thank you so much for all the information. Okay, that moves us to section 12.0, unfinished business, and there is no unfinished business this evening, which takes us to section 13.0, new business, and we have one policy, 2312, to review, first reading. Mr. Fleckenstein.
Well, good evening. Proposed revisions to policy 2312, copyright compliance, are presented this evening to align our current terminology and practices related to staff and student use of copyrighted materials. Proposed revisions are the result of a review of policies and procedures related to student staff technology use to strengthen our student one-to-one technology handbook expectations and address the need to incorporate language for access to and use of copyrighted materials, such as those found on the internet, into our existing policy. As you can see in the draft document, we propose that much of the policy language be moved to the related procedure. However, the revisions to this policy make clear the board's expectations to comply with federal copyright laws.
Can I ask a question? When you start talking about copyright, there was an article in the newspaper, I think it was this morning. I can't recall if it was the Everett Herald or in the Times, but it mentioned how certain, well, it happened to be a merchandising agency. I don't need to mention the name, but they did a photo shoot outside a building against a wall that had graffiti on the wall. And so they were sued by the artists who put the graffiti up because they have infringed upon a copyrighted thing. When our students start taking pictures of people, events outside of the area or in front of a building or something like that, how are our kids going to know if a graphic artist has copyrighted something on the side of a building, or a picture that happens to be on the wall behind something that they photographed is copyrighted? How far do we go, that's the question I'm trying to say, in ensuring that copyrighted laws are protected when they become so obscure as graffiti on a wall outside of a building or a photo of something behind someone?
Yeah, referenced in this particular policy is the concept of fair use under law. And in the related procedure, fair use is defined for our staff and for our students. One of the things I had mentioned in the development of this policy is their review of our student technology policies and procedures. That brought to light this particular policy is 20 years out of date for the current world. So that actually precedes 10 years ago, smartphones were developed. 10 years before that is the last time this particular policy and procedure was revised. So what we're working on right now, which will be coming to the board shortly, is a proposed new model policy from WASDA on digital literacy and media. And within that, the board will see language around the education of our students, around digital media use and copyright infringement. That should be coming to you in the next month. I don't know if I answered your question completely, but I tried.
I understand fair use, and I understand your comment within it, but it has become so onerous on the individual that's taking the photo or using whatever information to ensure that all copyrighted of anything, pictures, sayings even, slang even, in a musical, in a song, is, it just becomes very difficult for our students to know all that.
I would agree it becomes difficult. I would add that our students do learn in their courses how to cite a source. So if they do use an image, or if they do use or cite a website or anything off the internet, they do learn how to appropriately cite an image that they are using or displaying. And that, I believe, is step one to helping educate our students. So when they do come across an image and they do want to use it in a presentation that is just used internally for the school, that they are citing it appropriately.
It's very hard to provide severe penalties.
Do you have a suggestion for changing the way that the policy is written?
Well, it's very difficult when you start saying severe penalties may be imposed when you have a student in a learning environment doing things in which they're learning, to be told you can incur penalties for something that you're not even aware of may exist. I thought it very hard to cite graffiti as a copyrighted artistic quality piece of, and it becomes difficult when you have to say that here's the policy and our students are, they're just that, students.
So it sounds like the case that you cited actually hasn't been decided yet.
Oh, they had to go ahead and remove their suit, essentially. And they back down.
So you're saying that someone took a picture of something an artist did, put it on display, the artist complained and they took it down.
And they took it down.
Okay. Which happens to us.
Yes.
From time to time, we'll be contacted by someone because someone in the organization places copyrighted material on our website. They contact us, and our IT staff immediately takes it down. The policy's not an instructional material set or curriculum. It's the board's statement about how we should behave.
Yet, it is also how the students should behave. And I don't think students should be held to such very detailed use of fair use. I mean, fair use is one thing. It's different if it were.
But your policy is stating, or your proposed policy is stating our requirements under the law. What you're suggesting is that I think, is that we shouldn't tell students what their expectation is under the law.
Oh, no, not at all.
Well, but that's what we're trying to do based on legal counsel's best advice here.
I think we're holding our students to a much higher standard than what should be.
That's a fair opinion to hold. Counsel indicates that this is the policy that's recommended so that you protect the district from behaviors that deviate from that policy.
Understood. But it becomes too onerous on us to ensure that students are aware of and give latitude to so many other people as to what is considered copyright and what isn't considered copyrighted material.
Well, I don't think the policy actually creates that liability. The law creates that liability. And this is really expressing our responsibility to staff and to students to make them aware of this. This is the mechanism for making them aware of the expectations that they face.
I understand, but fair use is
not simple.
It's not simple. It's not simple, and it's not easily understood.
Agreed. But Doesn't remove the responsibility for us, though. Are you suggesting maybe, Larry, do we have some procedure that goes along with this?
We do.
And did we place the procedure in the Friday report?
We did.
Was there some element of direction in their instruction for coverage of the general topic that the director is suggesting needs to be attended to?
I don't know if I understand your question.
Is there some instruction for us to attend to this instruction of students and staff? Do we plan any training around this new policy?
Yes, actually, it is related to the digital media and literacy proposed new policy that's coming to the board here shortly. That expands upon the mechanism by which we would educate the kids around copyright and fair use.
Have there been any discussions about including this in the, what's the program that we use that staff use to go through required training?
It has and has been included in the staff handbooks that each of our staff receive.
And then isn't there an online tool that we use as well for required trainings like?
Safe Schools?
Like Safe Schools?
Yeah, Safe Schools, thank you.
I would need to research that if we have an explicit module on copyright.
Do we now have an ability to push this type of training out to kids through computers?
I could explore that with IT.
They'll be really excited about it.
A lot of the students already know it because there are a number of very litigious musicians out there. That is, the kids are making their own YouTube videos and putting out their social media. They've been given cease and desist. So my daughter knows not to do that. And I'm sure there are lots of kids that already know a lot about copyright, even though it's never explicitly said that way, because of all their social media interactions and all of the chatter that goes out there about the mostly litigious musicians. So, but I appreciate the fact that there are opportunities to educate our kids so that they can keep out of trouble.
I think with education goes an opportunity to make sure kids are aware of what it means. The only concern I have is it's not just text, it's not just artistic work, it's music as well as a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. And I think right now we need to make sure we're not going overboard in copyright compliance.
Pam, do you have a suggestion of something you would like to see happen, or do you want to?
No, I don't have a suggestion. I just don't think we should go as detailed of this and overboard in copyright compliance.
But I mean, you don't have to come up with a suggestion right at this minute. If you want to, we don't have to move this to second reading. If you'd like to evaluate it further, or
sure, I'd like some evaluation.
Is that something we can do?
Yeah, you can
provide us as to what the procedure would be and how detailed we're going to provide it to students.
So it sounds like the procedure is in the last Friday report. So
I don't know about that.
Or
I don't remember seeing.
Okay.
How about that?
So
we can go to the procedure here.
So we will take a look at the procedure as well. And
yeah, let me take a. Give me just 1 second.
How would you recommend moving forward on this?
Well, I think it depends on what a majority of the board would like to do with this.
Yeah,
It depends on how many of you are ready to move it to second reading, or whether you would like to entertain a motion to postpone action, to postpone it to the next meeting.
Directors?
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Been a motion, it's been seconded. Do we vote? Is there any further discussion on this? On the motion to postpone, thank you. Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you very much. And with that, we Move to upcoming agenda items. Dr.
Yes,
Cohn.
Yes, we do. And I would recommend, before we move there, that you could go to the procedure, the associated procedure, by clicking on it at the bottom of the policy and reading the procedure that is associated with the policy.
Associated with the policy.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Later.
14.1 is your special meeting, March 27. It is a work session on capital planning post-February bond election. We've attached to it, this agenda item, a capital planning meeting draft so that you can take a look at how we would envision the meeting unfolding. We don't typically do this for these meetings, but this is one that you've talked about on a number of occasions. So Mike developed and Cabinet wrestled with, and we've now placed here for you a draft of how we see the meeting structured. If you would take a look at that and tell us whether that meets the expectations that you had for the meeting, or whether you, as a board, would like the content adjusted a bit. That would help us know better the target that you'd like us to hit for a particularly important work session, study session. Depending on how it's structured.
I think it looks pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
Directors, do you see anything missing or that you would like to sort of focus?
It all
I
depends.
mean, I went to the link on the 30 March meeting last year to go over the board and community presentation that we presented, and it was very detailed as far as options to relieve overcrowding at Jackson, but it took us a long time to get through that.
You're talking about the meeting, the special meeting at Jackson High? It was a lengthy meeting, but we involved a lot of people in that conversation and structured it so that people could be very involved. This is just you. Yeah. And what this would use is the work product from that session. Yes. We wouldn't be planning on doing all that. We would basically
No, but to go over and revisit it and state, this is what we talked about, certain things we did, we would consider, pretty much take up all of your, in some cases, the 20 minutes and the 75 minutes.
Well, I think really what you're expected to do in this particular session is give us some direction about what you'd like us to do next. Yeah, we certainly could expand. You could make the meeting longer.
No. We need to be concise. Longer meetings, we need effective meetings.
Will the 48-year modernization cycle be the same one that Mike's presented with the 48 years for each?
Or it used to be 40?
It used to be 40 and now it's 48.
That's the one he's talking about, yes.
Mike's been on board a while now and he's building it bigger and better, so we can extend it to 48.
That's the one.
And I think then that's my fear of with 18 failing, those projects that are already behind, what we can't let get further behind.
Which is the plan for the discussion, is to talk about that.
You know what? One thing that isn't on here, and maybe it is, and I haven't seen, Oh, yes. When you start talking about to what extent might we rely on more capital levies to meet our facility needs, like for HVAC modernization or electrical, would you consider things like those things?
You could. That's
As a
that's
capital
why that's
levy?
why we would have that discussion. Anything that a capital levy is authorized for. Some districts use them because their tax base is so large that they can get them past a simple majority and they can build schools with them.
But I'm not looking at schools, but what about like HVAC?
You may not be,
and
but
electrical?
that's why the item's on there, so that the
So we
five
can
of you
talk
can have
about
the
that.
discussion.
Oh, okay.
That's,
Because I just don't know if our community would approve a capital levy for
That's
building
why
a school.
that's why it's on the study session for discussion. So are these the discussion topics that you want us to prepare for? Okay, thank you very much. Next item then is 14.2. It's your special meeting. Well, it's the first of two special meetings on March 28. It's the Audit Exit Conference, and it is in the morning, 7:30. And I think three of you have decided you want to come to this, so we will publish the meeting and invite the public to listen to the auditor's results with you. And then 14.3 is a special meeting in the evening. It is the Foundation Endowment Campaign event, and I believe three or more of you are coming. Planning to be there. Foundation Endowment Campaign event at the golf club. Pam is?
a conflict.
You have a conflict?
I believe I'm going to be there.
You're going to be there? That's two. So if only two of you are coming, we don't need to publish it. But if three of you are
I will
going,
be there if I'm.
But you don't. No. Gonna be.
okay, well, let us know, and we can always take it off the calendar. If we're only going to have two, there's no sense in going through that process. Thank you. 14.4 is the notice that we place for your assembly in Texas for the NSBA conference. And then 14.5 is your regular meeting. On the 10th of April, you have one regular meeting during that month. You've got a high school readiness presentation. You've got a property acquisition litigation update, which would be an executive session item. You have a continuation of policy review, so we'll leave that alone. It says second reading, but it'll be a first reading because of the adjustments you've made tonight. Then you've got a second quarter financial report. You requested an online high school report, I think. Isn't that what we're doing?
Update.
Rather than Friday report, we're putting it in here, right? Okay. And then you're going to get an update on the new student device that's selected, because the one we selected before, we couldn't buy enough of because they stopped making them. And we tried to buy everything they had left so that we could have the same one, and that didn't work. Apparently a lot of people tried that. So you're going to get an update on the new selection, and then there are several other items in that agenda. And we expect as well to have a revised pool agreement with the YMCA on that particular action item set as well, new business set as well for your consideration. And that's the set of upcoming agenda items that we have for you.
Excellent, thank you. That brings us to section 15.0, executive or closed session. And tonight we have added an executive session to the agenda. The purpose of this executive session is to evaluate the performance of a public employee and to discuss negotiations pertaining to district-owned real estate. We will recess for...
Mike, how much time do you think we need for you?
15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes.
35 minutes.
We will recess for 35 minutes. Both items could result in the addition of an action item to the agenda for disposition after the executive session. We are hereby recessed. And I'd like to call for a motion to amend the agenda to include,
I know, I'm sorry, I got to tell you the rest of the, to include an action item on property acquisition settlement.
to include
An action
an
item.
action item on property
Acquisition settlement.
acquisition settlement. Oh, I'm tired. I can't remember that many words in a row. It was. I was put on the spot. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I think I'm calling for a motion, or,
She moved.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we add an agenda item. Do I have to go through the whole thing again?
As stated.
To,
As stated.
As stated.
as stated,
To act on property acquisition.
to act on property acquisition. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Okay,
vote
and
on it.
if you look at your agenda, numbered as item 13.2.
You have to refresh.
Well, I think if you just click on a different item, you'll see it. Click and click back, maybe not, or refresh. You'll see, you'll see item number 13.2, property acquisition settlement. It includes a recommended action that the Board of Directors approves the settlement agreement establishing the purchase price and related expenses to be paid by the district for acquisition of property located at 4430 174th Street Southeast, Bothell, Washington. It contains a situation statement and background and prior action by the board as described to you by your counsel. After you act, we'll place that document in there.
Is it important that I repeat all that?
I don't think so. I think you could just ask
Okay.
for a motion.
At this point, is there a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Wenta and seconded by Director Lassane to approve the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. We will upload that document. There is no further business for you this evening.
And that concludes the business to become for the Board of Directors of Everett Public Schools on March 20th,
Thank you all.
2018.
Happy spring.
Happy spring.
Spring.